Howdy, everyone. Glad you're with us this evening. Today is Tuesday, September 14th, and the time is 5:30 p.m. We're here for the regular session of the Coppell City Council meeting. There is a quorum present, although they are in the back room, so I'll call the meeting to order. The first item of business is convening into executive session in the first floor conference room. We expect to be in there a minimum of an hour, and I will be back out to announce the work session. Thank you very much.
Make sure we got it right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you.
So,
All right, good afternoon or good evening, everyone. Sorry we're a little bit late. Just Coppell City Council, the time is 7:37 p.m. Normally I say that we have adjourned, but we have not. We have recessed from executive session. We will reconvene into executive session after this meeting and then follow that by work session. So work session will be conducted after the regular meeting of the Coppell City Council. Apologize for that, but we've had some serious discussions going on. We do have a citizen's appearance tonight. Just as a reminder, any citizen willing to speak tonight must sign in on the list outside the council chambers. The city secretary will be giving the names of the folks to me. We also have a series of public hearings that will be conducted separately. Tonight we have Councilmember Don Carroll that will be giving our invocation, and then we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand.
Let's pray. Father, we come before you tonight, thanking you for yet another day. We thank you for this community that you have blessed us all with and have placed us in. We thank you for the staff that works with this community, and we thank you for the citizens that live here. And Father, as we enter tonight's meeting, we ask that you will provide us wisdom to listen to the citizens, to discern the answers that we need to the many challenges and issues that arise. Father, we know citizens and staff and council all alike all love this community, and we, in spite of our differences, we are seeking unity for this community. Father, we just ask that your hand will be on this meeting tonight. We ask this in him. Amen.
Item number 6 on our agenda is a citizen's appearance. Persons wishing to speak must sign the register and list their residence of address. Each speaker must state his or her name and their address. Presentations by individuals shall be limited to 2 minutes each. An individual speaker time may be extended for an additional 2 minutes with the approval of the majority of the council. Persons signed up to speak will be called in order that they signed up. No personal attacks by any speaker shall be made against any member of the council, the mayor, individuals, or group, or corporation. Once our timer sounds, the city secretary will cut or break in and make the request to the mayor and the city council if we would like to extend the speaker's time to an additional 2 minutes. We do have a number of people that have signed up to speak tonight. It has come to my attention that some may be signed up to speak for the public hearings, which will be held under an additional agenda item. So if it is your desire to speak later, just please let me know when I call your name. For citizens' appearance, the first person on the list is, and I apologize for the reading of the names, Greg Goyle. Mr. Goyle? Good evening, sir. Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name is Jim Goen. My wife's name is Sally Goen. We live at 553 Stringfellow Drive, Coppell, Texas. Sherwood Park. We are here tonight because we received a letter from the city on August the 27th informing us that our carport was deemed to be illegal, as it's in violation of city ordinances requiring a 20-foot setback and limiting metal structures to 150 square feet. We live at 553 Stringfellow Drive, and we've lived there since 2005 with the carport intact and even depicted in the plat survey from 2000, included in the deed paperwork. This carport is well constructed. We have enjoyed it for 16 years that we've lived there. It provided shade, it provided protection for our cars from hailstorms, and we have no idea that it was illegal and had been built illegally. Given that the city inspectors have visited our property numerous times over the years to inspect new roof, inspect a room that we added in 2010, also inspected a water heater in our basement or in our lower section. Now, out of the blue, we are being asked to tear it down as if the city just discovered it was there. Being retired, this will not only be a financial burden, but it also causes an added stress because it's one of the things that we really like about our home. And we are spending virtually all of our time at home these days. Given this has clearly been not mattered to the city for at least 20 years, I'm asking the City Council to reconsider what you have asked the staff to do, which is to tear down that carport.
Sir.
And instead, we ask that you would grandfather in our carport since it has been allowed for so long. It's the fair thing to do at this point. I yield the rest of my time to my son, Gregory.
So Greg Goyle, I'm sorry, I got you guys out of order. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. My name is Greg Goyne. I live at 928 Creek Crossing, and I don't have any code violations that I know of. Could be, but I don't know about it yet. I'm here advocating just simply as a son for my parents' behalf. They downsized and moved to Coppell in 2005 to be close to our sons and help us raise them. I've been really proud of the way they've gotten involved in the community. My dad was a crossing guard for many years. My mom volunteers at middle school with, as a pianist for middle school recitals. And for all the bad rap that Coppell sometimes gets as a place to retire, Sherwood Park has actually been perfect for them. It's walkable, it's safe, it's affordable, and the homes are just the right price and just the right size. Now, talking about the code violation. First of all, it was a surprise, and nobody likes this type of surprise. You ask, why was it a surprise? Well, because it's been there since 2000 and out of the blue. And it was there when they bought it. But I spoke to city staff to find out a little bit more about this. And although the codes and their predecessors, I guess, have been around since the neighborhood was built, nobody could answer why there's been no record of a violation or even a warning for the last 20 years. And I do know that there was evidently one citizen complaint that was associated with this, and it's now evolved into a lot of carports and similar structures. And recently, City Council directed the staff to address the issue now and demand any non-conforming carports be taken down. So something I'd like to, since this was done at your direction, I'm returning to City Council and asking you each to reconsider this. Supposedly, since the carport has existed for 20 years in plain sight, nobody's cared about it till now. It's been visible on plat maps. Numerous inspectors, like my dad said, have visited the property. And even though I'm no lawyer and I'm no compliance expert, common sense would seem to indicate that some sort of statute of limitations should apply here. There are statute of limitations in Texas for much worse violations. Most felonies, it's 3 years. For some misdemeanors, it's 2. And so, I guess I just asked the City Council to reconsider and maybe impose a statute of limitations or perhaps a variance for the neighborhood of Sherwood Park.
Thank you for your comments. Next is John Wong. Mr. Wong? 569 Stringfellow, I think. All right, moving on. Marge, I think this is West or West. I'm sorry? Yes, it is. I correctly. Sorry about that. Please state your name and address for the
People
record.
say Wicks instead of Wick, but that's okay. My name is Marge Wick, and I live at 523 Lee Drive in Coppell. And I'm going to first start out with the carport company that most have used has a 4+5 rating. If you want to know the name of the company, I will give it to you. But they have been very reputable and enough to abide by Coppell requirements at the time, from what I was told. Most carports have been up for 9 years or more by them, and suddenly we received a letter, a copy that you all know about, that says we have 180 days to remove these carports. A friend of mine called the Code of Enforcement about the letter and said they could not afford to have this taken down. They don't have the money to do this. And someone told her that they would get volunteers to remove the carports. Okay, I was told by 3 at Code of Enforcement that there were over 100 non-compliant carports. That's an awful lot of metal that will go to the trash and then to the dump. And why? Isn't that against some of our environment? The most of the carports that are in excellent condition, they don't rust. They've been through hail, snow, rain, and very heavy windstorms, and they keep the cars free from damage and off the streets. The duplexes have only one car garage, and with the carports, 3 cars can be parked in the back, 1 in the garage, 2 under the carport, which takes 3 cars off the streets. Drive down the streets in our neighborhood and take notice that the number of cars, and there are many that are parked in the street because they have no carports. Why would they park them in the back when they can park them in the front? For safety, it is very difficult for anyone having to use a wheelchair or a walker to get into a car in the garage. The carport is a benefit for safety and makes it easy in bad weather while getting them into the car, and I know there are a few. The alleys are safe for garbage trucks, moving van trucks, cleaning vehicles, emergency vehicles, or other large vehicles. They come nowhere near the carports because the carports are far enough away from the back alley. I speak highly for the carports in the alley, and there are several between Lee Drive and Grace Lane, and I invite you to drive down and check them out, and you will see that they are all back from the property line and will not be hit by any kind of vehicles.
Ma'am.
The wooden
Ma'am.
carports, some need painting, some have termites, some have plastic tops, and my question is, are they in compliant over the metal ones that have no rust and can withstand through all the weather?
Ma'am, your 2 minutes has expired.
Oh, that fast. Well, finally, I would just like to say one thing. I have pictures of the different carports that I'd like to pass out for you to look at so you can see the condition that they're in. And they're all marked on the back.
Okay, if you'll give those to Ashley, she'll distribute those to us.
I think if you look. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your
I
time
hope we
tonight.
can be grandfathered.
Okay, I have 2 more names on the citizens' appearance list, and I believe that they are signed up or intended to speak on agenda item number 10. Ms. Walker and Ms. Beer, was that true, or were you going to speak on carports? All right, so we will have a separate agenda item for that, and we'll call for you to speak at that time. All right, thank you very much. So item number 7 is a proclamation, and I'd ask Chief Oates to join me down front, please. You guys can turn around and face everybody here. All right. Thanks for joining us tonight. Council, for your consideration. Whereas each year Texas experiences a variety of emergencies and natural disasters that pose significant dangers to communities, such that it is vital for all Texans to remain prepared for any disaster, and whereas it is imperative that all individuals and communities work together to develop preparedness plans which can help minimize the impact of disaster in Coppell and beyond, and whereas individuals and families are encouraged to develop and practice emergency plans to protect their household and property by taking time to create a communication strategy, a financial plan, and build a 3-day disaster preparedness kit and sign up for emergency alerts, and whereas Coppell's fire department and emergency management staff strive to increase public awareness of the need to prepare for emergencies and disasters, and whereas all Coppell residents are empowered to stay prepared today, which ensures a better and safer tomorrow for Coppell and the state of Texas. Now, therefore, I, Wes Mays, as mayor of the city of Coppell, do hereby proclaim the month of September 2021 as National Preparedness Month in the city of Coppell, Texas, and encourage all families and businesses to develop their own emergency preparedness plans, thereby creating a safer and more prepared Coppell. In witness thereof, I've set my hand until the seal of the city of Coppell this 14th day of September 2021. Council. Mayor Pro Tem Hinojosa Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve a proclamation naming the month of September National Preparedness Month and authorizing the mayor to sign.
Councilmember Long. All in favor?
Long, Hinojosa Smith, Carroll, Neville's, Dunn, Matthew Hill in favor, none opposed. The motion carries.
Thank you very much. You know, I think if we hadn't have had this little event back in February, we probably would be just sitting here saying, oh, that's going to happen to someone else. But I can speak from personal experience and on behalf of everyone that this is very real. So would you guys have a little something to say to us?
Thank you, Mayor, Council. We appreciate the opportunity to be here. And that's exactly why we're here today, is because of what happened in February. We realize that there's a lot of citizens out there that were not prepared for the event, being without electricity for so many days. The fire department itself had about 600 calls for service that week, and our public works department probably handled at least 300 additional. So that's a lot of strain on city staff, and trying to get to people in a timely manner was pretty challenging at best. So it's citizens have got to come up with a plan now while it's nice outside. Sit down, talk amongst each other in the household. Every household has a different need, different plan for everybody. So everybody's going to have to sit down and do this. And Bethany with Life Safety Park is here to give you a real quick rundown on how she can help you.
All right. Well, thank you, Chief Oates, and thank you, Mayor and Council, for your assistance in this proclamation. Preparedness Month is a time for all of us to take a step back and examine our current level of resilience. And so at Life Safety Park, we celebrate Preparedness Month year-round. And so we will continue to offer home and life safety tips online through our website, as well as our social media platforms. We also invite you to take one of our free safety classes, whether it's a monthly CPR class, bringing your children or your grandchildren in for a field trip, or attending any of the other free courses that we offer throughout the year. We've also partnered up with our wonderful Cosby Library here in town to offer a community preparedness workshop. So we invite you to join us on Saturday, September 25th at the library to enjoy this free, hands-on, and informative class that will offer tips and resources for both individuals and families to continue their preparedness journey. As always, if you have any questions or would like to learn more information about any of our upcoming events, please visit our website, which is lifesafetypark.org. And we also welcome you to stop by, visit us at Life Safety Park. Staff is always more than happy to answer any questions you have and visit with you. So again, thank you very much for your time, and we appreciate it.
I just realized as I was stumbling down the stairs that I meant to say something to the folks that were speaking to the citizens' appearance. One of the reasons that we were so late coming back out was we had a significant discussion in executive session on the legalities of our ordinances and a lot of other things. Our council is taking this matter very seriously. We are still, quite honestly, thinking about our options and determining what is the best steps for the future of our town. One of the things that I've been saying to the council and our citizens is that, we have short-term decisions that we can make, and we make those quite frequently, and we need to remember that those decisions that we make today have long-term impact, and that we can only impact positive change through careful consideration and collaboration. So just a bit of patience on your part. We're going to make the best decision we can. It's going to be in the best interest of the city of Coppell. And please understand that we certainly do not take these things lightly and provide every amount of consideration. So thank you for your time tonight. We know it's hard to get up here and speak, but we do appreciate hearing from you. Okay, item number 8 is our consent agenda. The consent agenda is routine in nature and generally enacted in one motion. These items have been previously approved through the budget, through past council actions. Any item may be pulled and considered separately. Full descriptions have been moving through the screen. We normally have a chance to discuss these during work session, which was delayed tonight. So this may be a bit out of order. But council, does anybody have any items that they would like to have pulled and discussed separately? Councilmember John?
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one question on agenda item, consent agenda item D.
Would you like to have that pulled and considered separately?
It's a quick question.
Okay,
yeah.
Quick question.
So I noticed that the list of the places that we're trying to go ahead and replace with the trees and shrubs and so forth. But I also noticed that the senior center was not included. But is that something that was looked at and was not needed? And
yes, sir. We went around to all of the city facilities and we prioritized it. So what we're bringing forward tonight is landscape replacements, but it was really at just 10 facilities. There was some stuff lost at the senior center, but not that much, not enough that it's needed to be addressed immediately. We'll be coming back with staff to do further plantings, more so in the spring than this fall. So.
And the reason
we did look at it, and there's really nothing that we wanted to get done with this round of plantings.
Okay, I was just saying if it's going to cost us, why not just get it all done at one shot? But
yeah, what we were focusing on, well, we prioritized. We wanted to hit the areas that obviously are most visible. We're also really focusing on 5-gallon plant material. A lot of the 1-gallon stuff, the smaller stuff, we want to wait until spring. We don't want to lose it in a deep freeze again. That's how we lost everything this time. So we do have a plan in place to replenish most of the landscaping. Some of it we're just going to eliminate altogether. Some of it it was overplanted or whatever the reason. But we do have a plan to come back to all the facilities, and it'll take us a little bit of time, but we will get there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Consent agenda item 8, council, for your consideration. Councilmember Hill?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve consent agenda items 8A through D.
Councilmember Carroll?
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Long, Hinojosa, Smith, Carroll, Nevels, Dunn, Matthew Hill in favor, none opposed, motion carries.
Thank you very much. Item number 9 is a public hearing. I open the public hearing and ask Ms. Farron Boswell to read it into the record. I was looking around for you.
Oh, sorry. Item number 9 is a public hearing. Consider approval of zoning change request from PD 217 R3-C to PD 217 R4-C to approve a conceptual site plan for the vacant lot R5R and a detailed site plan for the conversion of the existing Doggy Wonderland into a chess club and learning center with additional parking spaces located on 1.13 acres of land between Van Beber Drive and Bethel School Road, approximately 300 foot west of Denton Tap Road. It's actually east. Being represented by Daniel Parrish, DP of Designs and Development, LLC. So good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Mary Pearl Boswell, the Senior Planner. I'd like to give you a brief history on the property located between Van Beber and Bethel School. So Lot 4, which is the southern lot, was originally constructed for a daycare in August of 1984 and used as a children's daycare for 20 years through 2004. In 2007, PD 217-C was approved to allow for the conversion to a pet daycare, boarding, and spa on 0.637 acres. The site was renovated and reopened for operation. Various plans to expand the doggy daycare did not materialize, the last being in 2018 for plans to construct a new Doggy Wonderland on Lot 5, so north of this, the existing site, and convert the existing Doggy Wonderland into a rescue kennel and pet self-serve pet wash. There we go. With this request before you this evening, the existing Doggy Wonderland, the building in blue, is proposed to be converted into a chess club and tutoring facility for children. So this is, would achieve part of the pillars adopted through the 2040 plan to create business innovation nodes by repurposing commercial areas, as well as encourage redevelopment hotspots along Denton Tap, Sandy Lake as a major creativity zone. It also helps with creating or perpetuating a learning environment by diversify learning and enrichment opportunities. So the hours of operation for the chess club would be 9 to 9 all week long, with Monday to Friday, 3 to 9 being their most active time periods. This change in use requires 9 additional parking spaces, which are proposed to be constructed north of the existing building. So that's identified in gray with the additional drive aisle in the tan color. Existing parking spaces are proposed to remain, and a variance was granted with the previous PD to allow the existing configuration. A variance was also granted for the side yard setback for the existing building. This new use and site layout for Lot 4R will also see the removal of much of the existing internal fencing and dog playground equipment. This area will be reorganized to include the additional parking spaces, as well as additional trees and landscaping. The applicant is requesting to leave the existing basketball court in place, which is located at the northeast corner of the site in yellow. Nothing is proposed to be constructed on Lot 5, identified in the pink, but the lot lines for Lot 4R and 5 will be amended to reflect the change in property lines due to the need to provide additional parking for Lot 4, essentially going back to what is on the ground today. A concept plan for Lot 5 is shown to illustrate the possible construction and parking layout in the future. Nothing is proposed to be constructed on Lot 5 at this time. A detailed site plan will be required for the development of Lot 5, including any required screening between Lot 5 and the adjacent properties. So in terms of landscaping, all of the existing trees on site are proposed to remain. The area to the north of the building outside of the additional parking area will have grass and additional trees planted. More trees are proposed along the eastern perimeter and at the end of parking islands. The site will be landscaped at 39%, exceeding the 30% required by ordinance. All landscaping will be required to be irrigated. An existing masonry wall does screen the eastern perimeter. The screening wall wraps around the northern portion of Lot 4R to the western border. Shrubs line the western perimeter. The concept plan has been updated to show potentially required screening wall along Lot 5R for any future development. The applicant is not proposing to make any changes to the exterior of the existing building itself, except for signage. Staff would recommend that any proposed signage meet city ordinance requirements since they did not provide a sign package. So we did send out 18 letters within 200 feet as required by state law, an additional 147 courtesy notices within 800 feet. We did receive 2 written responses, and these were opposed to traffic along Van Beber and the car wash overflowing trash. Both items are unrelated issues to the zone change request. Staff did speak to one of the respondents, and they were not opposed to the use of the Doggy Wonderland site as a chess club. Staff did reach out to the various city departments to address the residents' concerns. So the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended a unanimous approval of the requested subject to the following PD conditions. 1, a replat will be required to subdivide the lots and to provide any necessary easements. 2, to submit draft dumpster agreement for the city attorney to review, and this shall be filed with the plat. All proposed signage shall comply with city ordinance requirements. And 4, a detailed site plan shall be required for the development of Lot 5 and shall include any required screening. That is the end of my presentation. The applicant is here as well to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Does our applicant have anything they'd like to add or to say? Please come forward into the microphone and.
Yeah, I just have a comment. Thanks a lot for the, I'm a new entrepreneur for helping us taking through this process. Thanks a lot, Mary, for getting this, taking through the process and getting approved.
Council, any questions for the applicant? Well, thank you very much. Appreciate your time and thanks for coming forward.
Thank you.
Okay, person signed up, we had nobody sign up to speak for the public hearing, and have we had anybody else sign up? Okay, so we'll go by that. Council comments. I'll entertain a motion then. Councilmember Matthew.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to close the public hearing on agenda item number 9 and move to approve.
With conditions.
With the conditions, that's correct.
Councilmember Nevels, second.
I'd like to second the motion.
All in favor?
Long, Hinosa Smith, Carroll, Nevels, John, Matthew Hill in favor, none opposed. The motion carries.
Thank you very much. Item number 10 is a public hearing, and I'd ask Mr. Steer to read it into the record.
Thank you. This is a public hearing to consider approval of PD 213R6H Live Work Lost Creek Edition, Lot 27, Block 1, a zoning change request from PD 213R2H to PD 213R6H to attach a detailed site plan for 5 two-story, 4,500 square foot live work buildings in a common parking area on 0.71 acres of property located at the northeast corner of South Coppell Road and Heath Lane at the request of Chris Collins being represented by Greg Frinka, GPF Architects, LLC. Mayor, Council. This is item number 10 this evening. It is a public hearing. My name is Matt Steer. I'm the Development Services Administrator, and I'll be presenting. As mentioned, the property is located on the northeast corner of Heath Lane and South Coppell Road. This was part of a rezoning that took place in 2007 that established 25 townhome lots to the east and a concept plan for the 2 offices for this lot. The applicant is proposing to construct 5 speculative live-work units and 1 common area lot outlined in blue, and this is consistent with the comprehensive master plan that calls for business uses on the ground floor and on-street parking. Each unit is proposed to contain approximately 3,000 square feet of air-conditioned space, a covered front porch, a 2-car garage, and has the potential for a second-story covered porch. The interior floor plan will be finalized with the retention of a buyer. Approximately half or more of the ground floor will need to be dedicated to a work area, while the upper floor will serve as a living area. There are 8 feet between the units, consisting of 1 foot and 7 foot side yard setbacks, which is consistent with a 0 lot line development. A private maintenance, go back here, private maintenance, access, utility, and drainage easement is proposed between the units, and this will allow the lot owners to access and maintain the sides of their respective units, and will also provide access from the parking to the rear of the units to the front. In terms of required parking, there's a 2-car garage that's required for each residence. One of the units is proposed to be could be potentially the most intense of the uses allowed, which would be a medical office. This was parked at 1 per 175, and that would require 9 spaces. And then 4 of the additional units would be professional office parked at 1 per 300, and that would equal 20 spaces. So in total, there's 39 parking spaces required. They are proposing 43 as follows. There's 11 on-street parking spaces along South Coppell Road. Previously, they had 12. They eliminated 1 due to visibility concerns that were raised at the P&Z meeting. Then they've got 7 shared parking spaces on the common area parking towards the rear. Each lot will have a 2-car garage for the occupants, and then directly behind the garage is 3 parking spaces. The property is required to be replatted to create the 5 live-work lots and the 1 common area lot for the shared parking. The on-street parking spaces along Coppell Road will require a portion of the lot to be dedicated as a parking and sidewalk easement, which will need to be shown on the plat. A homeowners association will be required to be for the maintenance of the common area, the landscape islands along South Coppell Road, and the fencing that's proposed along the perimeter. Draft HOA documents are required to be submitted at the time of the plat and will be reviewed by the city attorney, and they will need to be filed at the time of the plat filing. In terms of tree survey and landscaping, 2 of the existing 3 trees are proposed to be removed. That consists of a 20-inch pecan and a 26-inch eastern red cedar. The 3rd tree, a 17-inch pecan, is proposed to be preserved, and that's located at the end of the drive aisle. The total tree mitigation for this site is $1,968. There are 18 trees proposed to be added. These consist of escarpment live oaks, lacebark elms, and cedar elms. Black gravel is proposed between the units because it's heavily shaded and no vegetation will grow. In terms of the landscape area, the overall development is meeting the 30% landscape requirement. However, the typical 15-foot front yard is not being proposed in green space. It's more of a streetscape, an urban streetscaping environment, which consists of angled parking, a 7-foot wide sidewalk, 2 street lamps, landscape islands, and 7 overstory trees. The applicant is requesting a reduction in a portion of the eastern perimeter landscaping to 1 foot versus the 10 foot that's typically required, and that's to accommodate a 24-foot drive aisle width. The applicant is also requesting a reduction from 10 feet to 5 feet on the northern property line due to the 5-foot side yard setback at the corner of the northern building. Because this is an irregularly shaped lot, and to help with maneuverability on site, staff can support these landscaping reductions. In terms of screening, an 8-foot fence, board on board with a trim cap, is proposed along the eastern property line in lieu of the 6-foot masonry wall. The proposed 8-foot wooden fence will provide additional privacy to the residents to the east than would a 6-foot tall wall. Staff can support this request as we have for other cases in Old Town. The proposed front building elevations are similar, and 3 of the 5 units have upstairs balconies. The southernmost building has a wraparound porch because it has dual frontages. All the buildings are to be constructed of horizontal siding using traditional paint colors found on the Sherwin-Williams palette. Each building will have one main color, either a shade of blue, brown, light olive, brown red, or gray, and will have white for the trim. A gabled roof without asphalt shingles is proposed on each of the units. The rear elevation will contain a hip roof over a large outdoor patio space and over the garage. The garage doors are proposed to be made of architectural insulated metal with window panels at the top and are painted a color to complement the main color of the structure. The side elevations of each unit will have windows. That's the south side elevations will have windows. The north side will not have windows except for the northernmost unit, which will have the windows. There are dormers on the most visible portions of the building to break up the expanse of the roofs. The front doors are proposed to be constructed of wood, and the windows are vertically oriented, and this is in compliance with the Old Town Coppell design guidelines. We sent out 30 notices to surrounding property owners within 200 feet as required by state law, and 99 courtesy notices within 800 feet. We received 3 written responses in opposition within the 200-foot area. They had concerns related to the drainage from the site, screening, noise from the common area, and parking. And we have heard from 8 property owners within the 800-foot courtesy notice area who had concerns about the number of parking spaces that were provided on the proposal, as well as number of units proposed, and the visibility at the intersection of Coppell Road and Heath, more specifically in relation to property at McNear and South Coppell Road in a similar situation. After a very productive discussion at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the applicant agreed to limit the intensity of the land use for the development. The applicant agreed that only one of the units could have the most intense medical office type use, which requires parking at 1 per 175. The remainder of the units would have parking at 1 per 300, which would be a professional office use. The applicant agreed to screening the view from the large outdoor second-story patio area, screening the view of the adjacent neighborhood to the east through lattice work and other screening material. The applicant also agreed to remove proposed parking spaces closest to the intersection of Heath and Coppell Road, and that was shown on the previous exhibit. We have consulted with our Public Works Department, and Public Works has agreed to install a intersection ahead warning sign along South Coppell Road in case there are other visibility concerns. This would be a caution sign that would limit the speed to 20 miles per hour from southbound Coppell, once you hit McNear and on to Heath. This will be included in the ordinance, or with the approval of this, if say it does get approved. The Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the request, subject to the following PD conditions. One, that there may be additional comments during the building permit and detailed engineering review. Two, a replat would be required to subdivide the lots and to provide easements. Three, submit a draft HOA document for city attorney review and file those with the plat. Four, an exception be granted to allow an 8-foot wood fence in lieu of a 6-foot brick wall on the eastern property line. Five, an exception be granted to allow 1-foot perimeter landscaping on the east property line and 5 foot on the northern property line. 6, no more than 1 unit shall be a high parking generator, which is 1 parking space per 175 square feet, and this includes uses such as medical, dental office, and chiropractor. Garages shall only be used for the parking of vehicles, no workspace. And 8, screening of second-floor patio areas required to reduce the sight lines to the adjacent residences to the east. That concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions. The applicant's in the audience, as well as the applicant's architect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steer. Council, you have any questions for Mr. Steer? Councilmember John.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Steer, thank you so much for the presentation. I know that the Planning and Zoning Commission actually worked on this, as you said, much of this, but just from the looking at the site plan, this seems like this property is really, really jam-packed into this piece of property. So one of my questions is this. This is upstairs, you said it's going to be used for live place. That's correct?
Correct.
And how many bedroom is that going to be?
I'm not sure that they have a second story, second floor plan prepared, but I'll let the architect answer that.
Because I understand that there's 2-car garage parking. So what happens if they have kids, 3-person, 4-person? What happens to the parking situations then?
Yeah, really, this would not be an ideal place for a huge family to move into.
Is that a restriction that we're putting on to the whoever's going to be there, or what? I'm just trying to get the idea, because what happens if there's more than just 2-person?
No, and most certainly you could offer that up as a condition of approval.
Okay. And then I heard initially you said.
Wait.
Oh.
And Bob had just mentioned that might be a fair housing violation, so I'll defer to the attorney.
Sure. So that's the curiosity. What happens if they have 2 kids, 3 kids, and then the parking situations? I'm just wondering what's going to happen then. The other part is you mentioned about the potential second story being a porch, but then at the end, I think you just said that it is going to be a screened porch.
Right. So what they have, let me show here on the rear elevation, where they do have an outdoor second-story porch, it will have to be screened so they're not looking into the backyard.
For the rear?
Yeah, of the adjacent neighborhood to the east.
But that's only from the person from inside, so they'll have a limited visibility? Is that what, for the person that's inside? Or?
Yeah, the person inside would not be able to look through the lattice work or the screen to see what's going on in the backyard of the next door neighbor.
Okay.
And they've put that on these elevations here.
Okay. And the other question I had was, I know they had asked for a change from a masonry fence to the 8-foot wood fence. So the adjacent, I guess the parking to the adjacent neighborhood, what does that entail?
Okay, so where the dashed line is in orange, That's where the fence, the proposed fence would be. That's an 8-foot board-on-board fence with a trim cap.
So the question I was leading to is the parking spaces on the far right, top right sides. And then if they are actually facing, I guess, the neighborhood backyard, is it?
The neighborhood to the east would be the rear yard. I believe the rear yard, yes, it's the rear yard of 2 units.
And then the question then comes to, from the masonry fence, I think that would be more secured in the sense of possibility of a vehicle driving through the fence versus a wooden fence. Was that taken into consideration with the change request?
Now, it was brought up at the public hearing, the safety concerns. So I believe it was taken into consideration, yes.
And we believe that this is sufficient to provide safety for the next door neighbor?
Yes, yes.
That's all I have, thank you.
There's a 10-foot buffer between where you were talking about on the northern portion. There's a 10-foot perimeter at that eastern portion.
Councilmember Hill.
Thank you, Mayor. So that 8-foot board-on-board fence that is adjacent to the drive aisle running north-south, where we've reduced the required 10-foot landscape buffer to 1 foot, is that what you said?
Correct.
1 foot. Okay. That kind of waiver, I think, is really just a little overreaching. I mean, I think there should be definitely some green space there. And then the next thing, there's an existing fence where that 8-foot fence is going up. Are they taking down the existing neighbor's 6-foot fence? Or are they building it right up against the neighbor's?
I'll defer that to the architect and how they're going to work it out with the adjacent neighborhood or adjacent neighbor.
Correct. I'm sorry.
Greg Franca, GPF Architects,
Sorry,
Mayor,
Mr.
Council. Yes, we'll work with the adjacent landowner to either replace it so we have one common fence. We don't have 2 side-by-side fences with a dead space between them like we've seen many times.
So in that case, he'll actually be getting a fence that's taller and adds a little more privacy to the
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
to his backyard. Okay, and then Mr. Sear or Mr. Frank, how is the trash serviced coming out of these units?
All right. Well, so they're planning to do it similar to the ones that are just to the south, where they wheel the recycle and the trash bins out to Heath Lane, and they'll service them from Heath. It'll be a residential type trash pickup.
Okay, I got you. Thank you.
Councilmember Hinojosa Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Steer, can you put up the conditions for me, please?
Yes, ma'am.
The first 5, I guess. No, go to the next one, please. So when we say, like on number 6, no more than 1 unit shall be a high parking generator. This includes uses such as a medical, dental office, and chiropractor. Like, is it only limited to those 3? Because I'd love to know how you define a high parking generator.
Yeah, so a high parking generator is medical office. And so those were the medical office type uses we could come up with as an example of what a medical office is. So a dentist, a physician, or a chiropractor.
So is it high parking generator within a certain time frame? Like, because those are usually open, right?
Yeah, well, so as defined by the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
And I'm sure that's
Okay,
how
gotcha.
they had come up with the high parking generators.
And then I'm trying to figure out, like, as far as where this is located, where, with regard to like the flight path, are we somewhat close to that? Where is that?
Okay.
Because I guess I'm saying having done a lot on Old Town, right? We worked on flight path and making sure there were certain restrictions for.
Right. And so I believe where we ended up on the noise attenuation standards were 2,000 feet east of the Freeport Parkway. So I don't know that this would fall within that area. We can definitely measure and make sure it.
I would love confirmation on that because that to me looks like it's in the flight path.
Right.
And then I'd want to see conditions that go along with that.
Right, the noise attenuation standards. And if it is within the 200 feet, we'll have them address it with the plat. They'll need to note it on the plat as well.
Okay. And then can you put then go back to conditions 1 through 4 again?
Oh, wrong computer there.
Thank you. Sorry. And this just may be semantics, but as I look at number 1, there may be additional comments during the building permit and detailed engineering review that
that's
required by the applicant to adhere to, like.
Right, that's in relation to building code and engineering subdivision ordinance. When they see the full-fledged detail plans, that's just a disclaimer.
Gotcha, that there might be additional things that come up. Okay, gotcha. I just wanted clarification on that. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilmember Long.
Hammond is closer to the flight path than these houses are, to give you a sort of a feel for where these houses are versus the flight path.
Okay.
So it's by more than a bunch. So.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Matthew.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. Question for you. You had 8 opposition came in. What were their main concerns? Did they work with the applicant to resolve any of the issues?
There was a fairly productive meeting, and so I think the majority of their concerns were addressed. The one concern that might not have been addressed was they quite frankly did not like the density, and they wanted it reduced to maybe even 3 units, and then a parking area being provided for the whole area to use. So I think the residents are in the audience. They did sign up to speak.
Oh, okay. So they are coming up and speaking.
Yes,
okay.
sir.
And the follow-up question, you said the second floor plan is not complete, and you are asking us to approve without the completion of the floor plan?
It's just a speculative floor plan. So yes, we approve speculative buildings, shell buildings all the time.
Without defining how many bedrooms and so on and so forth?
Correct.
Okay.
Councilmember Hinojosa Smith.
Thank you. Actually, following up on Councilmember Matthews' question, we have other work-live units in that area. Was there any conditions with regards to number of bedrooms or anything on the second floor when we did that?
Not to my knowledge. I am not sure, though.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Okay. I'm just looking for consistency, that's all.
Right.
Thank you.
Greg, do you have a second
Councilmember
floor plan
Carroll.
put together? Okay, well, so Mr. Frankus says he's got a second floor plan. Oh, you don't?
These were the same as previous.
Greg, can you come up so we can hear you on the microphone? We're also streaming this, so it allows everybody to hear. Thank you.
Greg Franket. No, these are speculative. They'll be shell buildings, just like a shell retail center. The buyer may come in and say, I want one bedroom, one private area, and I want a wide open second floor because that's how I live. I may want 3 bedrooms. We don't know yet. That's the buyer's preference, how he wants to do that. As far as parking, every 3,500 square foot home in the city of Coppell only requires 2 enclosed parking spaces. So this is smaller than, I'll say, most houses in Coppell that only have 2 parking spaces, only required to have 2 parking spaces. I can address many other comments if you'd like. The streetscape is very similar to the Robertson property 2 blocks down at McNair. The parking kind of straddles the city and the private property, and then a wide 7-foot sidewalk so people can walk and pass and ride bikes and walk their dogs and not have to step aside. And then there's a landscape zone and then a front covered porch, which again is meant to create that streetscape sense, that, you know, welcoming into the homes or the businesses. So again, it's very consistent with other planned, already constructed, built, sold, occupied, live-work buildings on the street here. There's a question about the northeast parking. And again, it's curved parking lot. And then there's a wide landscape strip. This is northeast. And then there's an 8-foot fence with several trees in there. So it's very well screened between that parking and the neighbor's backyard. Let's see, the upper balcony, it's covered. The north sides are always closed, no windows, solid wall, firewall. The east wall facing the neighbors have a screened area. It's not 100% screen, but it's limited visibility. And then the south side will be completely open. And you're looking at another blank wall there. Again, it's just a added space for somebody to have some balcony outdoor space in their facility. I think that's it. I'll be happy to address any other comments.
Well, Councilmember Carroll had a question, so.
Thank you, Mayor. Real quick, I think it's number 5 on your list.
Yes, sir.
I think it's about the landscaping on the east and north side, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Just for clarification, can you talk a little bit, so I know these are exceptions, so the justification for the exceptions to reduce from, I forget what the other numbers were,
Okay,
10 feet down to 1 or
Yeah.
whatever they are, but can you sort of walk through some of the justification for why that's?
Yeah, originally they came in with a much narrower drive aisle going back, and our standard fire lane width is 24 foot. And so the reason for the reduction on the one that's southeast running north and south is to allow for that additional pavement for better maneuverability. And the one on the northwest corner where the facility or the structure is just for that corner of the residence to extend to probably 6 feet from that northern property line. The remainder, it tapers back, so the remainder is meeting the 10-foot. And so because it's an irregular shaped lot, what we wanted to get was the same facade, the same plane along South Coppell Road. And in order to do that, you had it clip that corner.
Okay. Okay, so the north side makes sense. The east side is the one, and it was just done to widen that lane to give full access
For better maneuverability for both the cars that go in perpendicular backing out, as well as the fire lane. There's a fire lane that extends midway to the building 3.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Matthew.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a follow-up question or a clarification. You mentioned one of the unit is going to be a medical facility or medical practice.
It could, yes, yes, sir.
Potentially in future, any of the other units can be changed to a medical facility?
No, just one per 5 at a time can be medical.
Or 1 out of 5?
Out of the 5 units, yes, sir.
Okay. And this unit, this area, what is the ordinance allow? How many units can you put it in there? Now, I know we are putting 5, but how many is ordinance allows?
The density, you know, it's really subjective in the historic district, but this does fall within our density. What we put in the comprehensive plan for the Old Town for the Old Town area. It is midway density between the live-work units just to the north and the super high-density ones to the south. So I think it's in between those.
Okay.
Councilmember John?
Mayor, just following up what Councilmember Matthews said, if we weren't giving the exceptions to the 1 foot versus 10 versus 5, then what will be the maximum allowable or buildable buildings here?
I'll leave that to the architect to answer. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you want the architect?
Well, do we have any other questions for Matt? Right. Mr. Franco, you were actually next up on the list, so why don't you come on, and if you have any comments to make, and it looks like we have a couple of questions for you. So, Councilmember John?
Yeah, we originally planned that fire lane on the east side as a 20-footer. That's based on previous precedent that was set on the Robertson properties. Again, 24 feet is a fire lane for, most commercial facilities, and this obviously is not a wide commercial facility for a Walmart or commercial office building. It's a 5-building complex. Adequate space to get in and back out. So based on what we did and was approved previously, we started the design that way. And then we were asked to widen that fire lane from 20 to 24 feet.
So originally, I think it was a 2-building proposal?
Before our time.
Right, it was 2 buildings.
Years ago.
And at that time, was that also requiring a exception from 10 foot to a 1?
That was years ago. I don't know anything about that project.
And so going back to what I asked originally, which is that without the exception, what will be the buildable units without the exceptions if there was no 1 foot exception to the 10 foot and then also 5 foot to the 10 foot in the setback lines?
At least the first 3, if not all 5 buildings would have to be reduced by 9 feet to get that 10 feet plus the 24-foot fire lane.
Okay, thank you.
So whatever that equates to, 26 times 10, 264, 540 feet of building times 5, 2,500 square feet.
Thank you.
So.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Councilmember Hill.
Mr. Franco.
Sir.
So is that indeed being considered a fire lane? I mean, it looks like you have aerial apparatus set up from the street.
And again, we're working with the city staff on their recommendations.
Yeah.
Again, hose length, if they parked right on Heath Lane, there's a fire plug right there. Or if they park up at the corner, the northwest corner between this property and the next. Or with, again, those are mutual access between the buildings. So, I mean, there's access to every building within a 150-foot hose length. So, you know, if there's a problem in building 4 in the garage, they can pull up on Coppell Road and come through it. But I would defer to Mr. Oates.
And Greg, I'm struggling to hear you, and I'd love to understand about the fire lanes and all of that stuff. So just so you can address all of us.
So if, as a for instance, if there's a fire in the garage of building 4, I would think the fire truck could pull up between 4 and 5, come through the mutual access, and those buildings are 60 feet deep, plus or minus, and they're well within the hose length of any fire design. Another option, they pull up on the drive at Heath and can reach most any fire in the building within their hose length, or they pull up on the northwest corner. So I think every point of every building is reachable from the street, either Heath or Coppell Road. Well, because of the length and including the 8-foot common mutual access between the buildings, which meant for owners to get through and maintain, but the fire department can blow through there if they have to. And so they are within reach to get to any point of those buildings in an emergency, and they don't have to go way around. Okay.
Councilmember
Yes, and
Smith.
the buildings are sprinklered on top of that, so. And
So I guess I have I don't know, Mr. Councilmember Hill, did you have another question?
No, it's
okay. So I guess I do have a question. I guess I'm understanding from Councilmember Long that we're not in the flight path or may not be as close to the flight path. So are these not being built with the additional insulation
they
of any
will
sort?
be built with full foam. The main thing is the roof. It's full foam insulation, and then the walls are 2x6 studs with what's called R19 bat insulation with what's called continuous insulation. So yes, they're very well insulated, both required by code and what the owner wants to build, because he's going to be living in one of them.
Gotcha.
And then the foam insulation is much more dense than bat insulation.
I'll admit I'm struggling with the density. I feel like we're packing a lot into this small space, and so I guess the other part to it is, has there been discussion? I presume there has. Well, I don't know. I'll ask the question. Has there been consideration of less units than what's being proposed here?
There has, but I understand it's not feasible.
Why is that?
It's a return on the dollar investment with today's material cost. It's just, it can't be built.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions for Mr. Franca?
And I want to introduce Chris Collins. He is the owner, developer of this, if you have any additional.
Good evening, and thank you for considering our thing here. I just want to introduce myself to the City Council, to the Mayor, for those of y'all that I don't know. I am a resident of Coppell. My name is Chris Collins. I live at 564 South Coppell Road, which is in the, 560 South Coppell Road HOA, just south of this project. Looking out my office window in my live work, I see this every day. After moving in and moving my Keller Williams office downstairs and moving into what is currently a 4-bedroom floor plan, 2 baths upstairs, office downstairs, living space, and office also downstairs. I saw a need that the city of Coppell has that could be met by developing this lot. So just to let you know, the blue one with the wraparound porch on the corner of Heath and South Coppell Road is intended to be mine. So as for living in one that's currently here, that was approved and built, there's some things I think can be improved on. The noise. My bedroom is on South Coppell Road, and so I hear a lot of what's going on. Yes, we have the airplanes. we don't hear the planes because of the construction methods. So Greg and I have spent a lot of time taking the things that I live with every day and work with every day and modifying that to be the next level of what would work well. And during our planning and zoning hearing, I got to meet some of the opposition from who are my neighbors, who are people that have stopped by my house and we've talked about this, who've, since the planning and zoning meeting, have come by and have tried to exemplify this. I'm not an out-of-town developer that's coming in here to make a quick buck, get out of Coppell. I've been here for 18 years or more. I've done business in real estate and mortgage here in Coppell for most of that time, and so intend to stay. I just want to develop a product that meets the needs of the business owners in the area, that also meets the housing needs. So I just wanted to introduce myself to let you know this isn't somebody coming from out of town to come in here and do something real quick and leave. I'm actually going to be living there. I currently live across the street. So just want to thank you for your time.
Collins, and I apologize for not calling on you. Your name was on the agenda and I missed it, so I apologize for that. Councilmember Hinojosa Smith.
So, Mr. Collins, you mentioned, first of all, nice to meet you and thank you for being here. I guess you mentioned living in one of those. You mentioned being in a home right now with 4 bedrooms. So, like, as an example, is that your plan to have 4 bedrooms upstairs and then your work downstairs? And
so had I been able to come in, I wouldn't have needed 4 bedrooms. I'm a single guy with no intentions of having a large family. They're all grown.
Okay.
I have a second bedroom for my granddaughters, and that's great. What I realize is there's concern about parking and density. Being compared to a neighborhood adjacent is kind of apples and oranges. There's a parking issue that goes on with the buildings at that corner. Our parking issue is different. Our parking is heavy construction trucks pulling into Robertson's pools. So there's an issue that they have had with additional parking, weekend projects, and we don't see that down on our end at Heath and South Coppell Road because of the density of our neighbors behind us being townhomes on the north versus single-family homes on the south side where the Heath comes through. The other thing that I've realized, we've tried to work, we heard there was a visibility issue. I lived there, I agree. So didn't have a problem at all giving up the additional parking space to increase the visibility. My neighbor perpendicular to who's catty corner to me today, and I have talked quite a bit about the drainage issue that we've worked through some of those, the board-on-board fence versus a 6-foot masonry wall, the visibility is just going to be so much nicer. It's going to look better. I would have opposed the brick fence myself if I was living there. But as for the bedroom count and what's actually going on, my neighbor to the south of me is a non-resident. He lives in Pennsylvania. He runs a CPA firm. He has an employee that lives upstairs. We see 1 to 2 vehicles 2 or 3 times a week maximum. There is a family that lives in the furthest south unit on my live work. It's a family it's a husband and wife and 3 children, and they have 2 cars, and we've not really had an issue. What we've had happen that I expressed in the previous meeting was we have people from the community behind us use our parking lot for overflow when they have parties and football games and family over. And it's just a neighborhood environment. Nobody's been opposed to it. If there's a strange or unusual vehicle, we, knock on some doors and ask. But other than that, as it's living and working currently with the 3 units that are much more high density in the unit that I live in on south of Heath, we're not having issues with parking. We're not having to ask people to move cars, get out of the way, and we're actually supplying additional parking for our neighbors behind us. So.
And I appreciate the clarification. I come from the standpoint too of, I know that Coppell is a desired community, as you know, right, for location as well as for our schools, and that we, as a result, right, we're just a desired community, and now we have a lot of people working remotely. And I can tell you, I have 3 drivers at home, yet we have 4 cars and 2 more drivers coming down the pipeline, which means 2 more cars, so 6 cars. And so I take that into consideration too when we look at additional 5 units in that space. So that's where I'm coming from and appreciate the clarity. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I believe we're good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So this is a public hearing, and persons signed up to speak during the public hearing will be called in the order that they signed up to speak. We ask that you give your name and your address, and you're limited to 5 minutes per speaker. I have, first on the list is Rebecca Walker. Like Rebecca, but could you give your name and address?
Yes,
for the
my
record,
name
sir?
is Don Walker. I live at 522 Mobley Way Court. That's about 2 blocks away from where Mr. Collins is proposing building his development. Mr. Mayor and council lady, I appreciate your letting me speak today. I'm glad to be here. I could say that I rather strenuously object to this project going forward as it is. I like Mr. Collins' present development with the cars in the back, but that's the one he lives in. Let's see, I've got 3 points I think that come up. I think it harms our neighborhood, first of all, and I'll explain that in a minute. I think it violates some of the Coppell ordinances, if not in deed, at least in spirit. And I think it sets a horrible example, precedent, if you will, by the way it's parking. If you remember the narrow streets that were developed in 1978, I moved here just when that was happening. The buses wind their way down and hope they can get between the cars. I think it's rumored that that was a decision that was struggled with and wound up going the way of the narrow streets. And we live today with the results of that. As Mayor May said that at the beginning, what you do on a short-term basis today has long-term implications. That's 40 years now, and I expect that will be 10 more to go, 20 more to go in those neighborhoods. The same thing applies to this development. The precedent is the parking method. It's not the fact that there are just cars there, but as you can see up there on that nice diagram, thank you for leaving it, the cars are parking in the garage, abutting the garage. That's called tiered parking or tandem parking, and I call it block-to-me-in parking. The same thing happened. The reason there were 8 of us at P&Z that appeared and protested. We have a development at McNear that's 1 block up. Our little neighborhood consists of sort of like a C or a bracket. You come in McNear on the north side, turn right on Mobley, go down to Heath, and you come back out. And so that's us. There are 2 homeowners associations there, but it's really one continuous neighborhood. We had a high-density unit come into the McNear South Coppell Road location. And the back parking lot, I gave you a handout. The back parking lot is very much like what is proposed for this one. What you see there, oops, you don't see it yet. What you will see there is that the rear parking lot of the one at McNear Road and South Coppell Road, I'm sorry. And if you can see that, and then imagine it 2.5 times as big. We only have 2 units at Coppell Road and McNear. There are going to be 5 here. This is a long, skinny lot. So that brought us to that planning and zoning meeting, and then we discovered this was just exactly like what we were upset with before. When it first came up at McNear, we didn't know any better, and we stayed home like some of the people of the Heath Road today are doing. But when it got developed, we saw that there were really 4 parking spaces in front and 6 lined up against the garage in the back, and that's it for a chiropractor and a photographer. That's, as you know, the property has to be parked, the parking places are in a mixed-use area, live-work area. They depend on the square footage and also of the business that's going in. So at a maximum of 1,500 square feet, all of them are like that. We can say that for a doctor's office, they need 8 spaces that he said, and 5 spaces for a professional office. Up there, we have, what did I say, 6 and 4 is 10, and we've got a 8 and a 5, that's 13. It got overdone there. So here we are complaining about this. But back to the block me in parking. The daughter comes in and says, "I'm sorry, Coach. I missed the game because some guy blocked me in and went off with a real estate agent looking at land." Okay, so the question is, are we going to let that happen and go, if it's permitted here, it will go throughout the city with every builder wanting to put parking spaces against the garages, and it's all across the web that people complaining about someone parking them in and leaving for 2 hours or 2 days. You can find it everywhere. And you might have an emergency. The P&Z thought about this because they thought that it was the worker would stay home all day and you could park his garage in. But we have spouses, we have children, we have emergencies, we have meetings to go to of the actual work office holder. We have lots of stuff going on, and you'll see this being pushed further and further into the community if this is let stand. To wrap it up, we think that it harms our neighborhood. I mentioned that. They eliminated the setback that was required. The brick wall was required. We think that's attractive to the neighborhood, not a distraction. And in 3 years, that pretty fence will be gray and decaying. We think that the calculation for the parking was incorrect. The congested parking lots endangers traffic at Heath and McNear, like at Heath and McNear when you pull out there, and I think that's being taken care of. It endangers children as people spill out of this parking lot down the streets trying to look for a parking place. In the planning and zoning, it was mentioned that
Mr. Walker, I'm sorry, you're well past your allotted time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
About done.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next on the list is Tina Beer.
Could I ask that Kay Smith speak on my behalf? Could I ask that Kay Smith speak for me?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Please give your name and address for the record.
Okay, my name is Kay Smith. I'm at 526 Mobley Way. And first of all, I just want to mention I'm not an expert on the flight path plans or anything, but I can tell you from experience they definitely fly over houses. Sound like they're going to land on my house at certain times. So it is in the flight path. Maybe they're not supposed to be there. But one of my main concerns, and I do want to thank them for the consideration at the Planning and Zoning Committee, one of the concerns was sight lines for pulling out onto the South Coppell Road because we have real life experience with having blocked sight lines with the one at McNear and South Coppell. And they've eliminated a parking spot, so we do appreciate that. Still thinking that it is too dense, too many units in such a small area. There's no real guarantee of about what kind of businesses will go there, but our desire is for them to be successful. So you want them to have people coming and be successful, but then that creates congestion. As Donnie Walker had mentioned, we're such a small community. It's not like we are, a regular block where we could just come in and go at the opposite end and just avoid the business traffic or whatever. Both our only way in and out to our homes are within 100, 200 feet of each other. We're limited. And it does concern me with, it now occurs to me when you're talking about the variances that they've allowed to have more turning radius, seems to lend itself to saying that that's too much on that lot. And one of our suggestions was to eliminate one of the units and create an entrance to where there's actually flow all the way around and not a congested one-way in the back. So that was my points. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Is there anyone else that was wishing to speak tonight? Please come forward and state your name and address.
I'm Rebecca Walker. I live at 522 Mobley Way Court. I just have a summary here. One of the things I was concerned about, and in the neighborhood meeting, other neighbors that live closer were concerned about the variance for the brick wall, that we need a solid wall between the commercial and the residential space. There is one in the live work development across the street. There is a brick wall between the ones that Chris lives in and his neighbor. The wooden wall would be more maintenance and less secure. And I'm not convinced all of those cars are going to get turned around and get out without bumping into it. The other thing is we want a code-compliant, realistic parking plan where it actually leaves spaces for the business clients to come and go from unobstructed spaces without routinely spilling over into our residential streets, where it is a safety issue and we should not be the backup parking plan. Neither should the businesses across the street, as was suggested at the P&Z meeting. The current plan will put commercial parking in the adjacent neighborhoods, and we've already seen this happen with the 2 live work units that are already built at McNear on South Coppell Road. Thank you for addressing the visibility issue for Heath, and I think you should refer it to someone else in the city to please address it for McNear and South Coppell Road.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay, thank you.
Was there anybody else that cared to speak tonight? Please state your name and address for the record.
It's Debbie Elliott. I live at 542 Mobley Way, and I just wanted to kind of reiterate with what the Walkers had spoken about, and one of my other neighbors said, be sure and mention that we can actually hear the wheels on airplanes coming down as the planes are coming in for landing. I've lived in the neighborhood 16 years now, and with our recent experience, and we're really speaking to the experience we've had with the units at McNear and South Coppell, and the narrow street that McNear is, when there's spillover, when there's even our neighbors having family and friends over parking on the curb. If they're on both sides, you can barely get through. I would hate an emergency vehicle trying to get down that road when there's so many, cars parked along the side. There have been incidences with one of our, the chiropractor that is in our area that had a big training thing one weekend, and they overflowed into the back in the neighborhood, back by our pool. All of those spaces were completely taken up by their training, and that was kind of a big issue, and we got to know our neighbor that way under kind of bad circumstances, and we hated that. But he didn't have any other place to park. He didn't have any place to send them, and so that was an issue. And also, since they have been in, I go in and out that entrance there at McNear at the stop sign, and the southbound traffic on South Coppell, the speed limit is 30. No one ever drives 30. We're not in Old Town Main Street where it's walking pedestrian traffic, and people aren't all that aware. And you just have to kind of inch your way out until you're halfway out there before you can see someone coming southbound. And multiple times, you just have to inch out and then slam on your brakes until they can get past you. So, we like the look of the work-live that's in our neighborhood. We just think it's too dense. And, if they had two ways in and out, that seems like that would be ideal. And, taking out one of those units and having 4 with adequate parking, I think that would be a solution. But I'm sure there's a way to make it work, but that's just our 2 cents for experience, what we've had. Thank you for listening. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have anybody else that is wishing to make a comment? Yes, ma'am. Would you please state your name and address for the record?
Thank you, Mayor. Christy Green, 351 State Highway 121 Bypass, number 411. Having been a longtime resident in Coppell, I appreciate all of the parking issues and those kinds of things. I am a part of the development of this project, so I want to speak to some of the things on that. I just got here, Ashley. But I appreciate a lot of the comments about the parking. Having lived on the streets in Coppell, had friends over, had parties myself, had people over. We all know that those things happen, and you walk out your front door some days and go, oh. So I appreciate all of those kinds of things. I think that the city has addressed some of the signage that is needed at McNear and some of those things. Having been on what used to be the Economic Development Committee for many, many years, and looking at land in town, looking at land at different intersections, trying to look at the pieces of the puzzle that were still left in Coppell for many, many years, when we have talked for years and years about us being built out. And look, we're still not. We're still building something somewhere because we keep finding all these pieces. And so when we look for the highest and best use of the land, and we look at the density, I think that as Greg Franca addressed, we are mid-range in the density on this particular project as to what has been addressed in the plans for our 2040 initiatives, and what we are looking for in Old Town, and what we're trying to build and what we're trying to make Coppell look like. With the density, we are mid-range in that with this particular project. So I understand it looks a little bit different than the project to the north. It looks different than the project to the south. It's mid-range between those. So I think density is addressed in what the zoning looks like for what we're looking for in, again, 2040, in what we're looking for in Old Town. And when we're looking at some of the other pieces in terms of how we're going to build it, the look is, it's a live work. And what we have looked at for live work in Old Town and the other places is somebody needs to buy the place. They need to know what their business is. They need to have a vision for that. And we can't tell them what their business is and how it needs to look. So if we have a 4-bedroom, 2-bath already and we don't know what somebody wants and we are within the density and the square footage of what the plans look like, and somebody comes in and says, I want a successful business, then we need to let them do that. And so in looking at what we have tried to go through, the pieces of limiting one high-density parking, one medical kind of a thing, we're looking at only doing 1 out of 5. So we're addressing those types of issues in that. And when we're looking at the parking, do we all have a driveway? Yes. So some of us are going to have more cars than we want to. And God bless them, we want them to have their cars and we want them to drive them and we want them to drive safely and we want them to be able to get where they need to go. And we're going to move them. Do we like it? No. But we all have cars and we all have to move them from time to time and we all have driveways. So if we can change the parking, we can. We also need to make sure that we're safe enough that we allow the fire truck to get in there and that we've accounted for that space for them to do that. So in an odd-shaped place and trying to build something in the highest and best use and do it where a developer can come in and do that, sell it, have a successful business, and still be viable at the end of the day, that's the goal for everybody trying to come into a project. So that's really what we're trying to do in something like this. Again, odd-shaped land that's been there for a really long time. And so if you want it to be what we're trying to make 2040 look like and what we're trying to make Old Town look like, it fits with all of the guidelines of what we've been trying to do in the city of Coppell. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. So council, your comments, please. Councilmember Hinojosa Smith.
Well, Mr. Hill had a question first.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Hill.
Thank you. I did have a question for Mr. Steer. So those tandem parking spaces that are behind each building, are those private parking for that building?
Yes.
Okay, so if they've got to play musical cars, that's up to them?
Yes, sir.
And they'll be signed accordingly, you know, like 1502 parking only, 1502, you know, for all 3 of those spaces, so they know that those are private parking spaces?
Yeah, we could have that done with the POA. Make sure that's written in the POA document.
Because I do understand.
Or the HOA document.
Yeah, I do understand the concerns of, you know, people being blocked in, but if it's private parking, then then I don't see an issue if people want to, you know, put up with that type of situation, even if they have customers who are coming in to visit that know that they can park back there, but they may have to move their car because the daughter's got to run off to soccer practice. So I don't have any issue with that in particular. So I just wanted to be clear on that. Thank you.
Councilmember Hinojosa Smith.
Mayor, I'd like to call for an executive session.
We will recess into executive session in the back conference room to consult with the city attorney. It's 9:21. Got elected, we would have 2 and 3.
I think we're getting ready to start.
A lot of building, a lot of zoning, a lot of, this is, time is 9:42. We're reconvening into the regular session of the Coppell City Council. We were on item number 10, which was a live-work item. Council was in the middle of deliberations, so we're going to continue that discussion. Any discussions? Councilmember Hinojosa Smith.
Mayor Pro Tem, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Hinojosa Smith.
You've done that all night long. Just joking, just giving you a hard time. Thank you, Mayor. First of all, Mr. Collins, Mr. Franca, thank you all for coming, Ms. Green, all of you for coming and for bringing forward what looks to be a beautiful concept. I personally want nothing more than to see our Coppell citizens also doing business in Coppell, having thought through, and having been a part of 2030, 2040 and comprehensive plan and understanding kind of that area and what we were looking to do and thinking of the highest and best use, definitely love the idea of a live work concept. And I appreciate all of you coming, also all the citizens that live in that area and providing your comments and sharing your concerns. I am struggling with the density, and that is something that just thinking through that space, I just think it's too much and too small of a space. And so I'm going to make a motion to continue the public hearing. And where's Mr. Hager? Would I just be continuing the public hearing and?
I think what you wanted to do was to continue the public hearing until what date?
September 28th.
So I'd like to continue the public hearing until September 28th and asking for the applicants to consider the density, meet with staff, and take into consideration the comments from our citizens as well. So that's my motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Councilmember John.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion from the council on the motion and the second? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Hinojosa Smith, Carol, Nevels, Dunn, Matthew Hill, in favor. Opposed? Long. The motion carries.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Hager.
You are welcome, Mayor.
Okay. Item number 11 is consider approval of a resolution of MetroCrest Services capital campaign and authorizing the mayor to sign. Vicki Chavetta to present. Ms. Chavetta.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Vicki Chavetta. I'm the Deputy City Manager, and tonight I'm here to ask the Council to consider approval of a resolution in support of MetroCrest Services capital campaign. For over 50 years, MetroCrest has served the Quad Cities of Addison, Carrollton, Coppell, and Farmers Branch. And for our Coppell residents, MetroCrest is the primary resource for individuals, families, and seniors who are in crisis. So over the past couple of years, MetroCrest was actually working at full capacity before the pandemic. And when the pandemic began, things got really crazy and things started really increasing. The needs in the community started increasing tremendously. In 2020, the MetroCrest Services organization did a needs assessment, and from the information that they gathered from that, 76% of the people who were using MetroCrest services were there because they'd either lost their job or had a reduction in wages. 54% of them had none or limited health insurance. And 76% report that MetroCrest is the only nonprofit that is available to serve their family. MetroCrest also has estimated that the increase in needs for their clients will increase again by 2020 tremendously. And so what they're doing is looking at building a new facility. This facility will be around 48,000 square feet. It will be located at Josie Lane and Beltline in Carrollton, and it will give MetroCrest the opportunity to increase their services tremendously, including things like a health hub, a center for employment and continued education, an expanded food pantry, a community garden, and additional space for other programming, volunteers, and community space. MetroCrest Services is running a capital campaign at this time, raising $12,700,000. And their goal is to raise a committed amount of $8.8 million by October 30th of this year, when they will be celebrating their 50-year anniversary. They also hope that construction will be complete in January of 2023. About a month ago, Tracy Eubanks, who is also here tonight, that can answer any questions you might have, he approached the council and all of the other Quad cities to request that between the 4 cities that they commit $2 million to fund the campaign. Coppell's been asked to provide $80,000, which is an amount that is based on the 4% of clients who live in Coppell. Funding for this particular project would be, right now it's in the assigned general fund balance, but there has been a question asked as to whether or not this could be funded by the American Rescue Plan, and we can definitely look into seeing if it's an eligible project, and if it is, then we could use funding from that for this amount of money. The resolution that's before you tonight does not include the funding source. It's just asking you to approve the commitment of the $80,000. So if you are interested in approving this resolution, you could add a caveat that we could look into the ARP funds as being a source for the funding, just so you're aware that that's an option that you have. And I'm available for any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Council. Councilmember Hill.
I'd like to make a motion to approve item 11 and amend it to give authorization to either use ARPA funds or designated general fund balance based on input from the city's auditor and city attorney.
Thank you for the motion. I was going to let Mr. Eubanks speak, but that took care of that one.
Oh, we can.
Councilmember Matthew.
I second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilmember Carroll.
Just to clarify very quickly, so we are going to check on the source of funds. Is it either going to be ARP or it'll just come out of general fund? Is that?
It's assigned or designated general fund.
Okay. Okay. Just wanted to clarify. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Councilmember Carroll. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Long, Hinojosa Smith, Carroll, Nevels, Junn, Matthew Hill in favor. None opposed. The motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Tracy, for sitting us out and waiting for the evening.
It was nice.
Number 12 is a city manager report.
Yes, Mayor and Council, just a few projects to give you an update. First of all, Grapevine Springs Park dredging. The dredging operation should be completed by the end of this week. If you haven't gone down there and looked at it, it's pretty cool. The diversion wall contractor has one more concrete pour scheduled for this week as well, and the Gabled baskets will go in starting next week, so it's projected to be completed by the end of October. So progress being made. Airline, all 4 lanes now are open to traffic. On Cambria, paving operations continued, and the project is expected to be completed by the end of October. Plantation sewer line work continues, as well as some water line work, and traffic patterns are having to be shared as needed. As far as the intersection improvements, the new signal equipment at Southwestern went live this morning, which will allow the paving at the intersection to be completed. The new signal equipment at Parkway will go live next week, which will then allow the paving operations to resume at that location. So for those that have been wondering why there hasn't been progress, it's because we've been waiting on the equipment to actually work. And recall that in the northeast corner, the turn lane has not started as of yet, but you may have noticed they're starting to do some of the markings and dropping off some of the equipment. The change order for the trail extension in that intersection will be coming to the council on the 28th, and the change order for the right turn lane at State Highway 121 and Denton Tap will be coming on the October 12th agenda. Beltline work will begin in the pre-phase for storm drain inlets this mid-October. There will be some limited lane closures, but so that's not the big pain. The first planned phase of construction that will result in loss of 3 lanes will begin in early November. So if you haven't started making arrangements to use a different and alternate route, you might want to start practicing now. So that is an update on the various construction projects and some future council meeting items. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Land, I hate to make an addendum, but is it fair to say that some of the streetlights may be out along Denton Tap while construction is in progress?
It's already happening, and yes, that is going to continue to happen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 13 is Mayor and Council reports. The Meet Your Neighbor series is back in person on September 18th at 2 p.m. Join us at the Cosby Library and Community Commons to hear from a panel of community members as they tell their personal stories of the Hispanic community. Second item is this past weekend we had the grand opening of the Coppell Arts Center. Started with the Art Sip and Stroll on Thursday night, and the parking lot at the senior center was almost full, leading to a very, very busy evening. Friday evening was a country western style performance by Matt Castillo and Coffee William, and then on Saturday our headliner was Kristen Chenoweth, which just about sold out the facility. And then on Sunday we had two performances by magician Mike Super. And I've heard nothing but very positive comments all weekend long, and it was clear that our citizens thoroughly enjoyed the weekend. So thanks to our staff for putting that together. I'm sure that they work some very, very long weekends or long days over the week. So thank you very, very much. Item number 14 is a public service announcement concerning items of community interest with no council action or deliberation. Councilmember Nevels.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things. I met with Superintendent of CISD Schools, Brad Hunt, today. Just some quick dates going on with the school district. September 16th is College Night, which includes over 175 colleges, trade schools, and military will be there. September 22nd, there will be a homecoming community pep rally at 6:30 at the football field, at Buddy Eccles Field. October 7th is the end of the grading period and early release. And then October 8th and 11th, there will be no school in CISD for a teacher work day and then a school holiday. And then last reminder for council as well, November 1st is a joint meeting with council and CISD school board trustees. That is on the calendar for now. So just want to give a quick update about what's going on with Coppell ISD.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? All right, we need to recess from regular session. We will reconvene into our work session. We're going to do our work session first and then go into executive session to finish out the evening. So we are recessed at 9:55 p.m. I think we can skip over item A, which is discussion of agenda items. Item B is discussion regarding the 21-22 work plan. Ms. Leach.
All right. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to provide you with an opportunity to ask any questions or provide any comments on the work plan that is proposed for the upcoming fiscal year. This is the culmination of the planning process that we began with you all in January as we went through the process to prioritize the goals and pillars that were included in the Vision 2040 strategic plan. Essentially what we did after we asked council to create and rate and prioritize all of the items that are included in that work plan, or included in the strategic plan. We came up with 12 items from a goal standpoint. Every one of the pillars is represented and has at least one goal that we will be pushing some resources to for this upcoming year. And so at this point, we'll go through each one of these lines one by one. We're not going to do that. I was like, what? I'm just kidding. We're not going to go through these one by one. Oh my gosh. However, if you do have questions about any one of these items, I'll be happy to answer what I can, and what I can, I will be happy to follow up with you tomorrow. So at this point, I'll pause and entertain any questions.
Mr. Long, Councilmember Long.
So what you're saying is that we are responsible for the genesis of this program?
Absolutely. You all provide the foundation, and we just kind of add some leaves and meat to the bones.
Okay. Well, you're welcome.
Thank you. We were wondering what we were going to do this year.
Brianna?
So you're not looking for any direction?
If you have some questions on, I don't know what that is, can you tell me a little more about that? This looks interesting.
Like host one block party per year? That looks interesting.
Yes. So some of these items that you see as the work plan objective is really a continuation from what we saw in our current year work plan. So our current year work plan for neighborhood engagement for National Night Out was to increase our engagement with the non-HOA neighborhoods. And so this is then a continuation of that work plan item from this current year.
Mike's giving me a look. Actually, I have another question. I do have. So I'm sorry.
So did I.
And this one, Councilmember Hinojosa Smith, this one, that specific item, also kind of helps us relaunch the block party trailer. So if y'all remember the trailer,
yes.
We kind of launched that thing, and then bad things happened, and so gathering was discouraged, and so now we'll have an opportunity to kind of roll that back out.
So
literally roll it out.
If you're looking at your work plan from one year to the next, and hopefully there's not, but suppose there's a tremendous shift in one line item, you can't just drop one initiative and completely shift 180 degrees to another one. How do you transition between?
Well, I guess the good news is that has not occurred. And what typically happens, right, so the shift in what is a priority for the council generally doesn't change that dramatically, and generally all of the items that are included in the strategic plan, we're working on all of the items, whether they're in this prioritized list or not. I mean, there are very few things that we're literally just not working on. These are the items that from a priority standpoint and a resource standpoint, we're pushing more towards. So to answer that question, we haven't really had to do that because as a community and from the plan perspective, we don't have a whole lot of things that are completely diametrically opposed to each other.
So what you're saying, Tracy, is that I don't know, I might be reading something into this, but the pillars and the detail under them forms sort of the basis for the numbers for the budget that the staff put together.
Yeah, so some of the work plan objectives that are on this plan right now are included in the budget in order to implement, yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes, so that's
it
what you're asking.
influences the
Yes.
budget a lot, right?
Brianna?
So I appreciate being able to see this, see who's responsible, and this is what y'all are working from. I guess next steps and timing. I mean, will y'all come back and say this is kind of where we're at? Yes, Mike, or how far we've gotten on each of these, or?
The next step for this is, so we present it, you start looking through it. On September 28th, there will actually be an action item for the council in regular session. So there'll be a work session beforehand item. So let's say over the next 2 weeks that y'all offer, hey, I need some clarification of that, or did y'all think about this, and here's some things for the staff. And we come back to you based on whatever input that you have. Let's just say you didn't have any input, we have it on a work session, anything, oh yeah, I didn't think about that, so we have time to adjust it. And there's, the reason why we adopted before October 1st, because if y'all, some of you remember, this isn't the plan for tomorrow, that it'll be all done, it's for things to be worked on throughout the fiscal year. And let's just say that something happens on the 28th, and it's like, we really need to do that. That's fine. We would just bring it to you the first council meeting in October. And the point is, this sets the direction based on the input that you receive. And so, so a conversation that I had with Bijou last Friday is an example. So I know we have some new council members around the table, but how the process has worked, and it's always subject to potential, improvement, is that in January, and I think just about everybody around the table was there at the January work session, that's where the council prioritized, these pillars and the goals under those particular pillars. And so that started us in the direction of how we started working on the budget, right? Based on these ideas. And then coming to you with these ideas now formalizes that that's our work plan. So in October, y'all know last year we dropped a lot of memos about various activities that we did during the course of the previous work plan. Those are being dropped in now as we speak. And we'll just do a quick overview about here's the things we were able to work on. And as you know, with the 2021 work plan, COVID just kind of shot it to heck as far as some of the things that we were going to try to do, especially on community engagement. So that's how the process works. And then, so it's really y'all's input, your direction. These are the things that we're thinking about that put those resources to those directions, and that's how we move forward. So that's how all this interrelates. And so what'll happen in January, again, you'll have your retreat, you'll do your prioritization, you'll start thinking about now 21, 22, 23. And then that starts getting taken into account the 5-year forecast. And so you'll be able to start seeing some of that as it comes together, and you'll be able to have input in that process then, which then helps formulate what these, based on your prioritization, some of the ideas about what the task would be. And then we get into the budget process itself. So,
Thank you.
yeah, does that help?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes, Tracy, I have a question on the last one, the foundation, sustainable government. I'll ask for the explanation, then I'll ask a question. As a fiduciary, the city will ensure that there are adequate financial resources to support the city services. Can you explain a bit more?
Yeah, so that really speaks to the responsibility we have for all of the things that we do to make sure that we are doing that as effectively and efficiently as we can, knowing that we are a steward of the taxpayers' dollars. And so those, if you'll notice in all of the agenda items, we have a fiscal, kind of that fiscal note. And so we do take into account, for everything that we do, what does it cost today, and then what will it cost tomorrow? And so knowing that we don't want to overextend, we want to make sure that we're doing things the right way. That's what this foundational statement is really all about.
So here's my question. For me to understand better, it would be beneficial to me, and I think other council members maybe, to understand the resource we have, right, as a 40,000 population city. Are we in par with other cities, other 40,000 population cities? Are we in par with employee count, or we understaffed? So we know we have enough resources to ask for staff to do certain things. Is that possible? We can get some kind of list of 40,000 population cities in the United States and how many staff is provided?
Is it possible, if there's benchmarks out there? Yes. The challenge will be, what services do they order? If you're just looking at a pure number, I have no idea what services they're providing. Are they full service? Do they contract everything out? I just don't know. So the depth of the research that would take would be much more extensive than just a simple, here's a 40,000 population and they have 400 employees. What does that tell you?
Right. No, for example, the discussion we had earlier, right?
Right.
Ordinance, do we have enough people in that
Right.
department for a 40,000 population?
But that's what I mean by that takes a much deeper research than just pulling off a budget and saying, like in our budget, you can go to the number of employees, you see what our size of our budget is, and we have 450 employees. I can pull that number, but you want more depth to that. I'm just saying it's gonna take more research. That would be something we could assign an intern to, for example. I'd have to assign a resource to do the research that you're asking me to do.
Okay.
So that you can see if we're comparable.
We have a benchmark, then we know if we are under or over or what we need to do.
It's a question of what service you want to provide, and
Right.
what you want to need to do.
Right.
It's, do you want to support the services that you want to support, or do you not want to support the services? Whether or not another town of 40,000 has 300 employees, and another town of 40,000 has 700 employees, and we're at 400 employees. I just want you to understand that a simple question is not a simple answer.
Thank you.
Don, I'm sorry.
I'm probably going to ask you to restate something you probably already said, but
Okay.
I'm slow to catch up. So
Sure.
this list of things, the origin of this list, can you go back over what the origin of this list is? This last year's list just pulled forward, or this is something that staff has come up with? Or what's the origin of this
Sure.
list?
So for each of the goals, so if you'll notice the color coding for each one of those sections.
Right.
That represents a pillar.
Right.
The goal that is identified in each one of those pillars, that was the result of the prioritization exercise that you as the council went through this January.
Okay.
And so we took that prioritization list
Yep.
and started then putting some meat onto the bones on, all right, if this is what's important, how then do we build on what we did last year? Because some of these are carryover goals from the strategic plan that were important last year. So how do we build on what we did last year then to take that to the next step? And then for things that were new, okay, well, what would this look like? And then how can we support that goal?
Yeah, this is current.
Okay.
Since it takes a budget to support the initiatives, you actually have to do the planning before you do the budget. Then the budget gets approved, and then you begin to plan. So you literally takes between the time that you come up with this list, and we will do another one, by the way, in January.
That's what I
You
was
guys
wondering.
are into-
That's what I was wondering if this
Every
would
year.
evolve.
Yes,
to something
yes.
else. Right, okay.
And the items will evolve, and we get to rate them, and the bottom ones fall off, and that gives them directions to work on the higher rated ones.
Okay, and then to reiterate or clarify what you were saying, so we will have an action item next time. We will discuss in work session, and then we will,
It's just basically the adoption of the 21-22 work plan. That's as simple as it is. There's no resolution, it's just an adoption of the work plan.
okay, so is this the work plan? Is that what you're
That's
telling
what
me?
you'll be considering, and
So this has not been adopted, even though it was created in January.
That's correct.
and then continue.
You got that, Don?
Yeah.
You got that?
Yes.
The council has not taken formal action on the adoption of the 21-22 work plan.
Okay.
And that's what we do each year about this time.
But we start the process in January.
Oh, yes.
So we're
Those are all good questions.
Kevin?
You may have just kind of trailed off at the end. Normally, does it go, January, priorities go there, then you go through the budgeting process, approve budget, tax rate, and then is this typically adopted after all that?
Yes.
So we're still operating on the same timeline, no like COVID adjusted timelines or anything?
And this is just all City of Coppell, this is council, this is historically the way. As I said, if there's something y'all want to do different, this is your work plan, but we take the information from you to develop the work plan. And it's, you tell us, for, I don't know, promote socialization, community cohesiveness, y'all may have some ideas specifically, and then here's your opportunity to kind of put those out. At January, we really just try to get you to focus on the goals and not, I don't want to tangent, but anyway, 2030 used to have specific tasks.
Yes.
And so we got you focused on the goals, and then we could go to the task and we can pull those out. 2040 is not set up the same way. Well, you were, right. So 2040, there's a lot of latitude on what those work plan objectives are.
Agreed. It's not our plan. We weren't the council plan.
What, you didn't have anything to do with that?
Yep.
Anyway, that's it. That's all I have, Mayor.
Oh,
That's all I have, Mayor.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We need to take a left.
Oh, item C, discussion regarding employee medical insurance renewals. Justin.
Right. Just real quickly, the council has said in the past that they would like to have us come in, before something is considered on the agenda, take it through a work session to at least a couple of weeks in advance in case there's any questions and everything along those lines. So that's why you're seeing it done this way. Granted, we're here late tonight, but that's why we're doing it this way. All right? The same way goes with the discussion regarding Trinity River Authority agreement. It's an annual agreement. We go through this insurance annually every year. It's a very repetitive process. But we do have new council members who haven't gone through the process, and this is the expressed intent of what y'all want us to do, of bringing these things to you at least a couple of weeks in advance. Okay? Now, Justin.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Good evening, good late evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Justin Vaughn. I am the Assistant Director of Administration and Human Resources for the City of Coppell. As Mike said, we're here this evening to give you a little preview of some items that we'll have on your agenda for the 28th meeting for approval that deal with employee medical plan renewals. These are annual renewals that we do every year, as Mike mentioned. With me tonight is the Director of Administration and Human Resources, Mr. Vivian Bowman.
Good evening.
And the city's benefits consultant, David Gibson, who's with Holmes Murphy. Hello. So Mr. Gibson's role is pretty much to advise our department, the HR department, and the city's benefits committee, who is actually all present right now. That's the city manager, the deputy city manager's assistant, and director of finance, assistant director of finance, and director of finance, chief accountant, myself, and Mr. Bowman, and some of my staff. So he kind of gives us guidance on these items. So again, just to provide an overview of the city's self-insurance fund, a high-level view of what that means, and then discussion of the products that are going to be up for renewal at a high level on your next meeting. So essentially, just a quick funding overview. So there are a couple different ways that health insurance plans are funded. It's either a fully insured plan or a self-insured plan. Fully insured plan involves basically an organization paying a premium to an insurance company to provide insurance services. Under a self-insured plan, the city basically, or the entity basically, is its own administrator and pays its own claims and utilizes the third-party administrator to do those services. City of Coppell is a self-funded program. And so that does mean that we use a third-party administrator to pay our own claims, along with other services that we'll talk about. So just very quickly and high level, these are the differences between a fully insured plan and a self-insured plan. Some of the advantages of being self-insured are flexibility. We have the ability to set our own plan designs and be creative when we can offer products to our employees. We're under a fully insured plan. You basically get what you get as you pay that premium. The other major benefit is under a fully insured plan, like I said, you do pay a premium, and you may not ever recoup those premiums if the plan is not utilized to its fullest. Under a self-insured plan, it's basically pay as you go. So we don't pay a claim until it's incurred. So there's no premium payment there. And so really quickly, some components of the self-funded plan. Stop loss insurance is one of the major components of our plan, and essentially what stop loss insurance is insurance for our insurance. It's really in place to help insulate our plan from catastrophic claims, and there's really two kinds. There's individual stop loss, which it provides protection for large claims of an individual, and then aggregate stop loss, which provides protection from a risk of higher than expected claims for the whole population. Just real quickly, here's an example of what an individual stop loss might look like. Claimant A, you see there, has claims of $150,000 with a $150,000 deductible in place for the stop loss plan. Once that individual reaches the $150,000 threshold, the insurance carrier, the stop loss carrier, picks up the payments, and that's in the form of a reimbursement. Any dollar over that $150,000 threshold. On the aggregate side, essentially what this means is that there's a set expected claim level every year by the stop loss insurance with a loss corridor, is a certain percentage over that expected claims amount. So in this example, there's 125% loss corridor, meaning once that city, the population reaches claims of $1 million, the loss corridor, once you pay the 25% loss corridor, then the plan will start paying reimbursements to the plan, anything over that 25%. So now I really want to focus in on the products that we have coming up for renewal. Now that you have a basis of understanding of how the plan works a little bit. So these include the third-party administrative services that I mentioned earlier, and that's through UMR. Stop loss insurance, a fully funded transplant insurance that we have, and then also life, accidental death and dismemberment, long-term disability, and short-term disability. Really quickly, this is just a quick chart showing you those four products, what we're paying for them currently, what the renewals are for those products, and then the dollar increase and percent increase. As you can see, we have pretty modest increases and rate passes and decreases in some scenarios, so that's good news. So as I mentioned, the city's insurance committee does come together and recommend renewals of these contracts over the year, and they are recommending that we move forward with UMR for our third-party administrative services. UMR handles our claim processing for the city of Coppell. They are a United Healthcare company and really offer us excellent access to top physicians and specialists in the North Texas area. They also have a best-in-class negotiated network discount that we enjoy pretty heavy discounts when versus claims submitted versus what we actually pay. As you saw on the chart earlier, UMR is going to be a slight increase of about 2%. There are some ancillary services such as case management and nurse line things that are slightly increasing as well, but that's the gist of the UMR renewal. The stop loss coverage that I mentioned is a fixed cost for us. It's a variable expense, but it is a fixed cost. It's typically year over year. We budget between 15 and 20% due to increase in large claims over all groups, not just us. And then higher utilization, new prescription drugs that are expensive, things like that, a lot of things that impact that renewal rate in the market. We actually have a reduction this year in that product with $150,000 individual stop loss deductible level. So that's really good news. The transplant coverage that we have, it acts similar to stop loss in the sense that it's another insulator to our plan, so that when we have an individual that needs a transplant, this insurance, this is a fully funded product, and it kicks in and essentially takes that individual off of the self-funded plan and runs it through the transplant process. So, for example, if somebody needs a kidney transplant, they'd be essentially carved out of our health, self-funded plan and paid for exclusively in this transplant. And it keeps us from suffering any catastrophic losses to the self-insurance plan. We have a rate pass this year, so that coverage will remain the same, dollar amount wise. And then lastly, our life, accidental death and dismemberment and disability renewal. Mutual of Omaha is our vendor, and they are offering rate passes on certain products such as the basic AD&D, voluntary AD&D, and short-term disability. There will be slight increases on the basic life and voluntary life and long-term disability. And there are several reasons for that. Essentially, the basic life coverage and voluntary life increases are a result in decrease of the overall lives in the plan, so the pool is smaller. And also the number of individuals that are over the age of 50 on the plan compared to prior years. So there's a actuarial calculation in there. The increase on LTD coverage is just a result of past plan utilization. And one thing to note on that, the voluntary products, the voluntary life and the voluntary AD&D are paid through employee peril deduction. So the city is not responsible for paying those things. And if you go back to the chart I showed earlier, there was a $31,000 increase. We actually don't, the city won't be paying all that. That employee will be paying some of that portion. So I flew through that. Yeah, are there any questions as we go forward to the next meeting?
John? Just a quick question. Have we ever done an assessment as to what it would cost if it wasn't self-insurance funded, but if it was fully funded?
Yeah, go ahead.
David, go ahead.
Yes, hi. Thank you. I can answer that question. So I work with many of the people on this team. I am the lead consultant for the city. I work at Holmes Murphy, 30 years of experience. I work with cities like the city of Dallas, the city of Fort Worth, but also the city of Keller, city of Rockwall. So I have a lot of experience working with cities. And with your question, I've done this a lot over the years. And so I worked in underwriting for 10 years. I had an insurance company before I started in consulting. Very good question. The natural thing is to think, well, let's charge a premium and let's shift the cost on to the insurance carrier. You have so many employees that are covered in your plan currently that the claim experience is fully credible. There's not as much volatility as there is in a small employer. When you're fully insured, you have to adhere to certain state mandates. You have to pay risk charges, premium taxes. There's a lot of added costs that get added onto the plan when you do that. So generally speaking, at around that 300 threshold, the claims are fully credible. And if you were fully insured, you would be paying for insurance company profits, risk charges, and things that you otherwise normally would have to pay. It is not, to answer your specific question, it has not been done in the last year or two. But if we did that analysis, I think it would come back to the same answer always for you, because you're so large, you have so many people in your pool currently. And you know, if you look at the evidence of where the plan has performed, this team in this room has done a great job of managing that over the last several years in terms of managing the expenses of the self-funded plan. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
We're going to discuss this further next next meeting, is that correct? This is just the preliminary?
Yeah.
Because Cliff gave me a big, long list of questions to ask, and I was just wondering whether to hold them.
Yeah, you'll have the contracts and the addendums and everything.
There'll be a lot of detail and
Yes.
everything, okay.
Yes.
I have no questions.
There's also a time on which you cannot ask any more questions.
Was that 10:27?
Yeah.
10:27 p.m.
Sorry, guys. Calm down.
Does anybody have anything else for Justin? Cliff, you've got to.
No, this is great. I mean, I'm going to talk to Mike about it tomorrow. Subjects at 10:30 at night.
I bet you will. All right.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Item D is a discussion on the Trinity River Authority Agreement and Dallas County Health Services. Louis.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Louis Rahil. I'm the Assistant Director of Community Development. And as Councilman Cliff Long said, I'm not accepting any questions after this.
Way to go, Louis.
Tonight, I just want to give you a quick update about Trinity River Authority contract. It's a contract that we've been contracting with Trinity River Authority for more than 15 years. The purpose of this work session item just to update the council on the upcoming Trinity River Authority contract. This contract serves three purposes. Number one, protect the public-owned sewer system. Keep the city compliant with the EBA and TCEQ regulations. And third, provide much-needed service for our industry, because we have access with Trinity River Authority to subject matter experts that can help them with their pre-treatment plan for their industrial waste. Under this contract, we ask TRA to do 5 things. Number one, conduct yearly surveys to gather information around the city about what kind of industrial users we have.
Can you close the door? Can you close the door?
And the second thing we ask them to do after we gather the information about the industrial users we have to sit down with and educate facility managers about their pre-treatment options. The third thing we ask them to do to permit industrial users. So again, we visit them on site, we issue them a permit, and we establish an inspection and sampling schedules. The fourth thing we ask them to do to inspect permitted users. Again, it's announced visit. Usually it happens once a year. We would call them, make sure the facility managers are on site, and we visit them to conduct an inspection. The fifth thing we ask them to do to sample permitted users. This one, the fifth step, is unannounced. So we don't tell them we're coming. We just show up to the facility, we unannounce just to make sure their pre-treatment plans is working as promised. We have 2 types of sampling techniques that we use. The first one is called grab sampling. Basically what it does, we just get a sample vial in their pre-treatment plan and we get it out just one time, and we have something called, it's 24 hours. So every hour we collect 1 sample for 24 hours, we mix them together, and then we test them. The second kind gives us a better understanding exactly about their pre-treatment plans and how it's working. Things that we're looking at is a lot of them are nationally prohibited discharges like fire, explosion hazard, destructive materials, corrosive materials, any toxic gases or vapors, or anything really that's gonna cause interference with our sewer system or slow down the flow of our sewer system. So those are the 5 things we're looking at, those nationally prohibited discharges. We have some local limits, and expect me to come back in the spring because we updated our ordinances based on TCEQ regulations. So I'll come back probably next March or April to update our local limits. And again, that's nothing we mandate here, it's just based on TCEQ regulations. And with that, I'm ready for your questions. Remember what Councilman.
So could you go back to your first or second slide? one for this. Okay, so what does this actually apply to? Does this apply to all commercial wastewater systems, or help me out? I guess I'm missing what the subject of the contract is.
Yeah, I'm gonna give 3 examples. For example, we have a food facility in town, Parcel. They make a lot of taquitos and chips. They use a lot of fat, oil, and grease. And if we don't monitor the industrial waste coming out of their property, the fog causes our sewer system to slow down and cause problems in our pre-treatment plant. So that's example number 1. Example number 2, we have AstraZeneca. They do a lot of pharmaceutical products. Pharmaceutical products have a lot of raw material that's very concentrated. We want to make sure we treat it before it goes into our sewer system. The third example I can give you is beauty manufacturing. They use a lot of shampoo and makeup, and a lot of these materials, the raw materials, are not very good to the environment. We make sure that we treat it on site before it hits our sewer system. So those are 3 examples I can give you.
Okay. And so that's where the next slide comes up. It lets you know who you're dealing with and what you need to do at each location. Got it.
Absolutely.
Okay, that was the point I was missing. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Any questions? Well, you see, chastising Councilmember Long did work well, so thank you very much.
Good job.
All right, anybody, we're going to move on.
Yes.
Dallas House County.
Oh,
Is it behind
another part?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Since y'all seen my presentation, I have to present it.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Again, my name is Louis Rahil. I'm the Assistant Director of Community Development. As Assistant Director, I have a lot of duties, but there is no more. There's one responsibility I take more serious than others: is protecting public health. In my role, protecting public health, I have to do 4 things. The first one, I have to be knowledgeable about all the diseases, disorders, and addiction that's across the nation, just to make sure we are ready for it. Number 2, I have to build strong relationship with every level of the government. That's with FDA and CDC, with our human health resources at Dallas County and human health resources at the state level. Number 3, I have to have access to subject matter experts. There's a lot of things that happens that I don't know, and I need access to subject matter experts. And number 4, I need to be able to provide access to our residents to essential healthcare services. This contract with Dallas County Health and Human Services allow me to do all 4. It allows me to be knowledgeable about global diseases and addiction. Allows me to build strong relationship with government facilities, have access to subject matter experts, and provide essential services to our residents. The service that we provide, I'm going to give you 8 different services we provide. Number 1, TB control services. Number 2, sexually transmitted disease control services. Communicable disease control services. For the sake of this presentation, we don't consider COVID to be in those numbers I'm going to show later on today. We need also to have access to some labs, and the Human Health Services helps us with that. We also provide immunization for a lot of our residents that need to be immunized. Child health care, and number 7, we do high-risk infant case management. And number 8, we do a lot of home visits. We have, we provide this service based on scaling, sliding scale based on people's income. A lot of times if we have somebody sick that cannot get to a family doctor or something, we could work with Dallas County to provide them a home visit to assess their situation. Those are the 8 services that we provide in the city. And we monitor probably 100 different numbers, but there's 5 that probably consumes 80% of all our numbers. Number 1, communicable diseases. For the sake of this presentation, I want you to think about cold and flu. And the great thing about this, you could tell in 2020 that all those cases of flu and cold cases went down. And that's a result of social distancing and us wearing masks. We have TB, which about 2 years ago, 2018 and 19, we had 2 outbreaks in 2 different schools, and that's why you see the numbers a little bit high. 2020, we did not have, schools was in session, so that number was pretty controllable, and this year is good as well. Sexually transmitted diseases, I cannot explain why the number is down. I have no idea.
We're being broadcasted.
But, you know, access to labs, Dallas County honestly provide a great service for us. Sometimes we need to test water samples for health purposes, or food samples. They are able to do that for us. Immunization, this is number that Dallas County, right now, we had a meeting about a month ago. They're talking about how can we get people to go back and use immunization. When they say immunization, for the sake of this contract, we don't mean vaccination, because vaccination is available to anybody who lives in Dallas County. But we understand the numbers are down, and we need, you know, we work in with we have 2 areas in the city where we work closely before to make sure that the numbers goes higher, because we need people to be immunized. And those are 5 numbers we monitor almost daily. And I'm ready for any questions.
I'm going to make a comment that that's okay.
Go ahead. Here?
Don't nag him on.
You know, familiarity obviously breeds contempt. You know, you've heard that, you know, all your life. And the numbers show it.
Without familiarity, we would read nothing. The church goes
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Question.
Yes.
Okay, item E is discussion regarding the American Rescue Plan funds. Mike Land and staff.
Yeah, Mike Land and staff, that's right.
Mike Land is me, myself, and I.
That's right. No, there's no I in there, it's us. There is no PowerPoint presentation, so no pretty pictures, sorry. So back in the late spring, the federal government passed the American Rescue Plan, and at that time they identified what were called non-entitlement units, which the city of Coppell is for populations of 50,000 or less. And then for those that are higher population, they had basically an automatic distribution. So the American Rescue Plan funds started coming out, and the non-entitlement units in the state of Texas and other states, it was reliant on the states to request the funds. So as I've been providing some answers to you, you saw where the Texas Department of Emergency Management contacted us, and I guess it was in July, and basically said, hey, in order to receive these funds, you need to start supplying information. So our finance department started working very diligently to get that information to them. In that notice, it said one thing that was important. It said that the governor was going to ask on August the 2nd for these funds, or when 90% of the NEUs filed their paperwork with the Texas Department. So then came around the first part of August, we never did get confirmation that the governor had ever actually made the request for the funds. And when we contacted their staff, the response was basically, we just understand that the governor was supposed to make the request for funds to the August 2nd. Then on August 18th, we get notification that the governor has asked for the funds and will be distributing them soon. And then based on the information I got you, you saw where, I think it was August the 20th, right, where the funds came in. Part of the designation of the funds, these American Rescue Funds, when it first was announced, we thought, and I think I talked to y'all in several of the council meetings along the way, that we thought we were probably going to get around $9 million, and then based on some formulations. And then, I guess it was in July, they identified, based on the new formula, that we were getting around a little over $10.2 million. They started promulgating the rules, and the last set of rules promulgated were sometime in July. So during that time between the first rule starting to come out and when we were talking in July, everybody was scurrying to figure out what you could use the funds for, and trying to identify what the criteria was, because as I was asked, I provided y'all with the extensive uses that go well beyond the city of Coppell and anything that we can do. And then they started providing some guidance, and then that guidance, there was a lot of, and I think I described it as, here's the general uses, and here's kind of the bumpers that we could have, and there's a wide berth in there as far as what the uses could be. So we started in other cities, and they started holding sessions about what you could do with the funds and everything along those lines. So it wasn't until after we knew for sure what the money was and when we were going to get it that we actually started working on what the potential projects could be. And so after August 20th, and we had the money in hand, it's appropriate to come and say, okay, council, in essence, we're getting about $10.3 million. We've got the first half, if you will, on August the 20th. We get the next half anywhere from the next 12 to 24 months. It depends on which regulations you look at. We have until 2024 to actually specifically identify what projects we're going to be using them for, and then we have till 2026 to utilize the funds and have them expended. Throughout this process of identifying the projects that I included for y'all to take a look at, we have been working with our auditor, who's going to the same training that we are and looking at the same materials that we are. And I think in reference today, based on some of the questions, you know, this past year we went through a single audit because the amount of funds that we're getting from the feds will continue to be in a single audit position for the next several years, basically. And so we want to make sure that our auditor is good with whatever we're proposing to do, and we want to make from a city attorney standpoint that we're good for what we're trying to do. So the recommendations that we have to you on this, let's call it the first half, are basically things that we've identified as potential expenses that could be used, that the ARP funds could be used for. And I won't go through the whole list tonight, but the point is, utilizing the funds consistent with the intent of the ARP funds for the benefit of the community. I know that, and just having some general conversations, for example, if, you know, through the, I was going to call it SURF, but through the funds we had last year in 2020, we granted almost, what, $1.5 million, I guess, to the business community here. These ARP funds could be utilized for some of that as well, if that's something that the council has an interest in doing. It can be used for infrastructure, and, you know, in the list we identified a couple of things, and Kent and his team are identifying additional projects that we could use the ARP funds for in lieu of issuing debt. So they're going through that evaluation as well. So there's the park projects that we identified. We're going to be talking in executive session a little bit about the drainage project. We talked about the one-time payment for the employees. We talked about some of the staff. I think it was in the finance department as a result of COVID and being able to bring the staff accountant back in. And just in general, those uses are the things that we think, based on the auditor and the city attorney and the staff's research, are all eligible expenditures. So there's some things there that I think I mentioned. For example, I had a laugh today. The automatic help me, toilets, automatic hand washing, those kinds of things, you know, hands-free operations or automated operations. So I asked the question, I complicate life. I asked the question about the maintenance of those things, and the answer was it's the replacement of a AA battery. So it's not like, right? It's not like it's incurring a significant long-term expense for those kind of things. And a lot of the toilets apparently have been already replaced to automated flushing. So Anyway, I presented this to y'all this evening. If these are, with the exception of the one that I would like to move forward with is the personnel. The rest of them are going to be projects that we will be bringing forward to you, and if the expenditures are more than $50,000, they're going to be coming to council. Let's just say that we go out and bid all the faucets, and that's what they come out to, right? If the expenditure is less than $50,000, then we just work our way through that as far as the utilization of the funds, and then we do the amendment of the budget like we've done historically with y'all in the past. So I'm just asking for overall, is this the flavor, the direction, is this okay? Are these the kind of things we've contacted other cities to what they're seeing and using it for? And it's basically, we're all in the same boat. We're all exploring what we can use the funds for. We have funds that we've issued for bond funds for certain projects. So we already have the money in place, so it's not like it can supplement that, because that's what the the bonds were issued for. So they're being utilized for that. That's why Kent's taking a look and seeing, okay, well, if we can do these kind of things, then we can offset and not have to issue the debt. And those are the kinds of projects we've come to you, as far as the next kind of round, if you will. So I'll be quiet. Be happy to answer any questions. Kim and Jennifer and Mary. Mary's kind of the lead as far as the ARP funds are concerned. And she and Jennifer and Kim and Bob have all been working closely together to make sure that anything we propose to you is vetted prior to us knowing whether or not we can actually do those projects.
Brianna has a question. Brianna.
I have a comment and a question. I think first and foremost, I appreciate all the thought and research that's gone into it. I know there's a lot of ambiguity as well, right? As there usually is with funds that come from other places. Yes. But all that to say that I like everything that's been proposed and appreciate the thought that's gone into it. The one that I'm most in favor of too, sooner rather than later, is the staff piece. And I guess my question on that piece would be, if we were to approve it or move forward with it or give you the okay, what's the timing on that for the staff to?
The objective would be that we do it in this fiscal year, so 2021 fiscal year.
Right.
Right. So we've got a few weeks to put that together, to make that happen.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mark?
Yeah, I'm in full support of, getting the employees of the city, make them whole for missing out on that cost of living increase for last year. Because it was tough and people had to really bite the bullet, and so I'm all for that. Regarding all these things with the parks, I can't get behind that. I think these funds need to be used for real infrastructure issues, also helping the community in any way that we can. I know that we can do things to help students get caught up. And I don't know how that works with CISD, but this is a lot of this stuff is, I think, is a waste of money, quite honestly, and that we could use those funds to do things for the community as a whole that would be much more significant.
Okay, I have a question for you. How do you feel on the business side, support of the small businesses that suffered?
I'm all for that. I just know that as much as we put stuff out there, we didn't. I don't think we got the response that we anticipated, but I still think we should have some sort of programs to help the small businesses in town for sure.
Don?
the staff accountant one on here, so I would say typically the funds would not be for recurring expenses, but this looks like it's rehiring staff, so that'd be a recurring expense. So my guess is I'm not understanding what that is, but does that make sense? Because it.
I defer to the people who've done the research.
It's for, you can build staff back up that you put on hold because of COVID. And this was one of those positions that we put on hold, and then we came back and said, we need that position. So you can fund that salary up through the 2026.
So we're still creating a position to be funded, I guess, infinitely into the future. Is that, am I?
Well, if you're not creating a position, it's a position that we had that we placed on hold because of COVID and the sales tax.
And then we did not bring it back in the new budget, is that right?
Yes,
Yeah,
we
we
did.
did.
We brought it
In this
back
current
prior
year.
to, yeah.
You gave us direction to go ahead and make that happen.
Okay, so this just.
It's a way to get.
We're not gonna pay for it out of.
General fund. We can use
What we
these
were
funds.
originally gonna pay out of general fund, we're now gonna use these funds, but it's still only a temporary, so it's in the budget ongoing.
Yes.
Just for however many, how long are we talking about funding it through 2026?
Yes.
So like for
And-
4 fiscal
Yeah,
years?
as an example, just to be really clear, we came back to the council, we got authorization to fill the position. When we built the budget this year, we didn't know for sure when this money was gonna come, if it was gonna come, how it was gonna come, what all the things were involved with it. So the budget actually is funded, that position is funded in the general fund now. This money comes along and says, hey, you can use it for this purpose. And so we can choose to do this, or we can choose not to do this, I'll just say this. If the council says, you know what, we want to put quite a bit of this to business, right? It's all on paper right now.
Yeah, this is just one of the potential things you can spend the money on.
Right.
Doesn't mean you have to.
Right.
But it's already funded.
Yes.
Right.
We've already funded it, so it's not for the fact that we got these funds that this job is
No.
being created, or being funded, right?
But
So
under their definitions,
we can use.
you could choose to do that.
And then to Mark's point, I guess, about the parks, I guess I'm torn on that a little bit because I don't know the scale of what those projects are, I guess. I mean,
The majority of their projects are smaller cost, it's just, there's so many of them,
Okay.
in terms of, but the dollar amount is not a significant dollar
Well,
amount. That's,
Yeah.
to this point, we could be budgeting in terms of just general maintenance, much like we replace toilets. We could replace faucets and do those kind of things. It's just where you want the money directed, that's what the question is.
So are we gonna do those park projects
Those,
anyway?
those weren't on a high priority of list of things to do. I mean, like I said, we replaced the toilets this year in the parks. I mean, just to put it in perspective, a faucet, let's say a regular faucet, Mark, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we looked it up, the faucet's like, a new faucet's $250. A automated faucet is $500. I'm just saying generally. And so that's what I mean, incrementally, it's not, that it's going at a big cost. The cost to resurface well, again, we know pickleball's gone crazy, but the cost to resurface the tennis and the pickleball courts, it's higher usage, people are getting out, and those type of things. On the trails, the trail enhancements, y'all talk about doing the trail enhancements, interestingly enough, these funds can be used to do some trail enhancements. And so that's what I mean by this birth of, it just has a really wide range. And the reason I gave you the list is so I could have this very conversation with you, is to say, these are the kinds of things that just we can bring forward. It's not, you did not authorize this dollar to be spent on those parks, right? That's not what you're doing. It's giving you an opportunity to have direct input and ask questions about, just like Mark did, just like, what about this? What if we direct it that way? What would that program look like? And time's on our side. Like I said,
we have 4 years.
Yeah, and like I said, the only one, that's just me pressing. It's just, I'm trying to get something taken care of this fiscal year.
So I'm in agreement on the whole make whole the 3% or what the personnel proposal that's out there, I'm good with that proposal.
Right.
Go ahead and get that out of the way. I guess I'm a little bit curious about what is the process going forward as we decide to spend the funds, and I mean, are we just gonna get piecemeal, like as projects come up, they're just gonna come to us, or are we gonna see a grant?
No, we'll come to you, just like we did tonight.
Mhm.
We'll come and show you, okay, here's some of the things that we're thinking.
You're right.
Let's say, and Kent's given me kind of a preliminary list, and he's given them, and they're just kind of looking at it. And I think it was a pretty significant list. Let's just say that. And so we would put that together, because infrastructure clearly, I mean, y'all saw, it's clearly a listed utilization. And so we'll come to you with that as well and say, we've prioritized, and here would be the infrastructure projects that we would recommend for it. And if you, again, give us some direction on that, that's great. And then we'll build the package. Right now, I don't want to build a package, because I don't know. This is the first time you're seeing it.
Right. Right.
And when the final rules get published, hopefully we'll even get better clarification as far as, okay, that's how that necessarily fits in terms of a category.
Okay.
Right.
Well, and that makes sense. I don't want us to get out of our lane on doing a lot of the minutia, but I would like to sort of have an idea of.
Well, that's the
$10 million.
categories that I gave you. Those are the general categories.
Okay.
And so as you think about, like it said, it was infrastructure, something in broadband. I forgot. Water, sewer, broadband. Right. So for example, I had another conversation with Superintendent Hunt today. And he told me the same thing. I can't identify a need, but he and I talked about, okay, well, what's the creative side of that? You may not have a need today, but what might you need as far as some broadband related digital learning, right? And his crew, they're so into it right now, and the state finally is going to provide some money for remote learning finally, and those kind of things. So they're in a little bit of flux too, because they're getting money as well. So to that question, we're going to keep working together and see what necessarily hits. But
So I'm good with coming up with a bigger plan.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
moving forward with the personnel. The personnel, did you say it was about $1 million?
It's about $1 million.
Roughly, just for that piece, okay.
John?
Yeah, so I do appreciate you coming up with a, proposal in a sense, but I'm gonna agree partially with Mark about all these proposals that I think that, they're nice to have type of things, but not really a necessity at this time, especially given the time of people that have been impacted by COVID. And if I'm looking at this correctly, one of the things that we can do in responding to the COVID impact is the impact on households and individuals, which goes on to say that the fund could be used to assist individuals on their rent, mortgage, utility assistance, and even cash assistance, specifically as to what he talked about, how that can be done. So I'm actually more for trying to looking into this, if it is possible, to use this fund to assist the households that have been really impacted by the COVID. So it's something I think that we should look into, because it does say that assist the household is something that we could use the fund for.
So, well, we got, sorry. Brianna was next.
Sorry about that, Brian.
Oh, that's okay. But Bijou hasn't spoken. If you want to go to Bijou, and then we'll do a second round. Go to Bijou.
Well, actually.
Oh, then I'll go. Okay, it's fine.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
I guess go again. Is that what you said?
Well, I was
Not
just.
according to Cliff.
Well, I had. Yeah. Look at Cliff. No. Well, yeah. Were you?
I was saying that's something that we should look into.
And I take that as we will walk away from here and we'll figure out what are some of those programs and everything. Because as you know, during last year, I'll just use last year as an example, we deferred that all the MetroPress. That way we didn't have to set up a whole operation.
Well, yeah, and that's fine too, but at the same time, I mean, we're talking about a lot. I think there are times when people are having issues paying even water bills and electric bills, and I understand that we have the MetroPress services for that particular purpose. But it also talks about how we could even make cash transfers depending on how we use that. So I'm really, I mean, that's something that I hope that we look into, assisting each household that have been impacted by COVID.
You realize that
I hear you. I'm just saying, what I will walk away from here is we'll do the research to bring back to you to say,
Yes.
here's the way that could be.
That is exactly what I'm asking.
Right.
And I think we did that last year because we actually funded MetroCrest well in excess of our annual allocation to them for that exact purpose.
And I get it, but I'm looking at additional options that this possibly does provide. So that's what I'm asking you to look into.
Okay.
That actually assists the households.
Brianna?
Yep, and so, tired, sorry, I have to think of, so I guess for, you know, I was listening to what you were saying as far, Councilmember Hill, and I think you bring up a good point as far as, I think the majority so far is in agreement of moving forward with personnel. And you had brought up the parks and then infrastructure, and I guess, you know, I'd be interested in other alternatives, right, or other recommendations on the infrastructure piece. I think that one of the things I want to bring up on the parks piece is I also think of health and wellness. So when I think of COVID, I think of like how do we impact the greater good, right? And so I hear you, Councilmember June, too, on like individuals and needs for rent or paying water bills or other things, and there might be other opportunities. But you know, I don't play pickleball, but I know that that's something that a lot of people are doing. I know a lot of people are working from home. I'm still working from home. I know I use the trails for walking. Health and wellness is a big thing right now, and an issue that so many people are dealing with, and people are wanting to get out and do things. So I think of that. I think of, you know, small things, even of just automating our, you know, faucets where we can help reduce the risk. I can tell you that as a person who went through cancer, that going through the pandemic has caused me a lot of PTSD and a lot of issues. And so even going to the parks, like I panic at touching faucets. So, you know, and one of the things is that funding was provided even to businesses, and a lot of businesses went to automated. So I know it seems small, that may be insignificant, but yet would have a huge impact on our community. And so I just want us to think about some other things and just the health and wellness of our community to help decrease the spread. So that's kind of where I was coming from when you brought up these ideas of the parks. I was thinking of health and wellness. So that's it. More comments. Thank you.
Kevin?
I love the idea of taking care of the staff. I think that's a great idea. I actually agree with Mark on his infrastructure thoughts. I really think that we should try to focus, and I know that trying to look at some of the language on what we passed with like bonds and stuff, and what specifically that can be used for, and like just saying, if we passed a bond for Beltline, you know, can we use those funds for other, you know, road projects and put money towards Beltline or whatever that looks like. I really think it's a great opportunity for us to or if we can, you know, offset that and then, you know, pay off debt early or things like that. I like those kind of things.
Just to clarify, I followed up on the debt question. There's not really a way to pay off debt early. First of all, utilization is limited. I mean, but to, let's say, pay principal, that doesn't work that way.
Okay.
And so we don't have the ability to do that unless it's callable.
Mm-hmm. I got you.
Right.
Well, but you know, I think infrastructure is something we should focus on definitely and prioritize that. Although I do like the things like automating the to all the touchless stuff, but I do agree that I think we should try to focus a lot of our things on infrastructure improvements along the city. So, kind of where my head goes.
Mark?
I think it's Bijou.
Go ahead.
Bijou, we want to hear from you.
So I'm hearing about this ARP funding from Mike last Friday.
I don't know about other council members.
I have been talking about it since last spring.
So this $5 million coming in?
No, we didn't know for sure what the dollar amount was
What it
going to be
was.
till just more recently.
Okay, so anyway.
But in general, we've been talking about, we knew we were going to be getting funds. We didn't know what they could be used for or exactly when we would receive them.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, so my question is, the budget we passed, any of the infrastructure projects that we funding from the budget, can we use this money for that purpose?
well, on the capital, on the streets, I think that's where we have to go back and say, I don't even know what street we have in this year's budget off the top of my head, Ken. I mean, Plantation and Cambria and everything else is already ongoing, so we've already got that in place.
Beltline's the big one.
Right.
We have some utility money that we've budgeted to cover the utility
Right.
work on Beltline. That would be an example.
So in answer to your question, we will take a look at those, but I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, so do we need a work session to discuss further how to spend this money?
Well, there's gonna be more, there's gonna be a lot more to this. Especially, I think after we finally get the final regs, then that'll be the best time for us to talk. Because even between July and whenever the final regs come out, there's gonna be further definition and further clarification as far as what the utilization can be. And based on your question right now, I can go back now and say to staff, okay, what capital is in our budget this year, and does it qualify? Can we use these funds for that purpose, right?
And I gotta apologize to John. I was sitting back thinking through the difficulty that we went through last year, trying to figure out how to fund families that were being impacted negatively by COVID. And it was really tough for us as a city to do that. And that's part of what he's not, he's saying it, but he's not saying it directly. It's really difficult, until it gets printed and you can, you have strong guidelines on what you can use it for. We're kind of guessing at this point. But clearly this is going to be COVID related, and how you make that relationship is going to be in the details of whatever is written. So, but I think what you're saying is absolutely what we're headed down the path of doing. And this is, we've got 4 years to spend the funds?
Oh, actually through 26. We have 4 years to make the determination on how we're gonna spend the funds.
So it doesn't have to be done quickly or casually. It can, we need to be careful with it.
And just to recall too, it's typically, with the exception of that, it's typically one-time expenditures. It's not for reoccurring kind of cost. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off if I did.
Oh, no, just, that's what was my, can we use some of the money from this fund for the budget that we approve for capital improvements and others? I don't know what qualifies for that, project.
Yeah, the general the FAQs kind of.
Yeah, I'm reading through that FAQ.
And it kind of gives some general ideas.
Right.
The regs, as they come out some more, will be able to give you even better answers. Like I said, Kent's going through and identifying, and every time he identifies a project, we're checking with the auditor and with Bob to make sure it's meeting the definition.
Every day I get something.
So we don't want to bring you forward any ideas that don't even qualify, right? In terms of, and so to John's point, the language says, here's what we can do with it. So now we got to go figure out, okay, what does the program look like and how would it be administered? And then we come to you and say, oh, by the way, this is what it could look like and this is how it gets administered. And this is what it's going to take if we do it, or if we contract with someone else, there's going to be an expense associated with it, administratively, which is all fine because it's all being paid for by this ARPA fund, ARPA, I call it. Do what?
I said paid by us.
By ARPA.
Ultimately.
Yeah, at the end of the day. It's from these funds.
Yeah, and I wanted to say, I agree with John's idea of helping those families who really suffered. But building that machine internally, I don't think we have the bandwidth with the current staff to manage a program like that. And to bring on employees and spend money that we could be just giving directly to MetroCrest, who does that has a day-to-day business, and we have people from Coppell going there, I think that would be the more prudent way, that we could get more money out to it, as opposed to being eaten up by internal administration fees.
And everything that he said, he read there, MetroCrest does. They do all that hands-on stuff, and deliveries and all that sort of stuff.
They already have the names of people from Coppell who ask for assistance.
Let me just say, we're not gonna solve this tonight.
I
I appreciate the
agree with that.
conversation, but I know y'all are tired, and we still got a couple of things to cover. Okay, Cliff is, sorry.
He's stoked.
He's stoked. Kevin?
The last year, and this is before my time on council, how much money did we get from Dallas County? Was it the CARES Act money? How much money did we get for Dallas County?
It was a little over $2 million.
2.2.
And how much was dedicated for like the grant programs and things like that? I'm sorry.
Too tired to recall.
Sorry for putting you on the spot.
I don't remember how much I want.
It was over 800,000.
Yeah, I think we
on
gave it
one,
up.
and then he did the restaurants.
Yeah,
Because-
Mindy had a
And then
hard
we
time
did-
giving it away.
But we,
Well,
Yes.
And I know that we went to what initially there was a grant amount, and then it was expanded because, in that last round, so
Yeah, we didn't have that many, as many applies as we thought.
do you know how many people applied for that final round? Again, I'm so sorry for putting you on the
I
spot.
can tell you on September 28th.
I like that. No, and just because I am thinking about the businesses that, went through those hard times and stuff, and I know a lot through the chamber and stuff. It would be nice to do something similar as far as that goes, but at a appropriate scope, because I don't want to, I wouldn't want to designate a bunch of money and then it not get used and stuff. So having some of that information would be really cool to kind of see.
I can send it tomorrow. We have it all.
I was already saying, we'll include it in tidbits.
That'd be great. Thank you guys very much.
I have the monthly report that I have to file with Dallas County. I just did it this afternoon.
Do you remember?
It's sitting in my office.
Oh, okay. Well,
I just knew that you would have that information.
I can tell you, we
So
gave
the-
$245,000 to MetroCrest.
Okay, very good.
And then we've done some other, because it's broken into social services, the different grants, the business grants, what we spent on city facilities and all that.
School districts.
The school district, yeah. So I'll get that to Mike to attach to tidbits.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
So,
I appreciate you guys.
The takeaway is this is going to be an ongoing little process. We're not going to solve it tonight. We're not going to solve it next week. You guys have got some homework to do.
And as y'all hear things, as you talk to your peers and everything along those lines, we're reaching out to other cities to find out just what they're doing, because there's, you put more minds to it, the more creativity to it. It's interesting though, so far it's been pretty consistent as far as the utilization.
All right, anything else? Well, this is the end of work session. The time is 11:15 p.m. We are adjourned and we'll move into executive session.
Thank you guys.
What's that? Oh, I do. The time. No, well, we have adjourned from executive session at 11:17 p.m. We are reconvening into regular session of the City Council at 11:19 p.m. to announce that there is no further business resulting from the executive session, and there being no further business before the council, we are adjourned at 11:19 p.m. Thank you very much for your participation and staying with us tonight.